Chapter 570. Was this a trick? Life was more ordinary in small episodes. There were only a few ups and downs, but they often determined the direction of life. For Qin Sheng, what happened today was just a small episode. But for the elders of the Tan and Zhang families who were going to meet tonight, what happened recently determined the ups and downs of their lives. Qin Sheng was at a different level now, so he didn't need to lower himself to the level of his sixth uncle and Lu Chang. What he really needed to face tonight were the two old foxes. They had been busy since noon, so they hadn't eaten yet. So they randomly found a barbecue stall on the way back. This was the peak season for barbecue, and there were barbecue stalls everywhere. Qin Sheng had traveled all over the country, and his favorite barbecue was still the night market in Xi'an. The taste, together with Tsingtao Jiujiu beer, was enough to make him remember it no matter where he went. However, before that, Qin Sheng first asked for Yin Pan's opinion. As the only woman who had followed Qin Sheng to the northwest for a business trip, Qin Sheng certainly had to care about her feelings. She was not some vampire boss who exploited the workers. Moreover, Yin Pan might not be used to this kind of food. It depended on her childhood habits. If she came from a rich family, she might be used to living like a princess and might not be able to accept the taste. After all, her stomach might not be able to accept it. Fortunately, Yin Pan had no objections, and she also wanted to try this local specialty. There was still enough time. Lu Changxi had already had dinner, so there was no need to wait for him. The place to meet was a tea house, not a hotel or a restaurant. After all, in this kind of atmosphere, they might not be able to eat much. The night market had just started. Because they had something to do at night, they didn't drink. They ordered a few bottles of shi and special drink, Bing foam. This drink was the uncrowned king in Xin. No matter how hard you tried, Pepsi or Coca-Cola, you could not enter the Xin market. This soda tastes good. Yin Pan didn't eat much. She only tasted a few mouthfuls of barbecue and grilled vegetables, and then sipped the drink. Almost all girls would want to lose weight, let alone a beauty like Yin Pan. From her figure, it could be seen that she definitely had a strict diet and often exercised. Hao Lei smiled and replied, "Didn't you read it? It says that we've been drinking it since we were young. We loved drinking it when we were young, but I don't think it tastes as good as before. Maybe it's because there are too many choices nowadays." Qin Sheng thought that he would have to rush to Gansu after he finished his work tomorrow. He said casually, "Yin Pan, after you finish your work tomorrow afternoon, you can go back to Beijing directly. Or you can stay in Xi'an for a few days. You can take it as a paid vacation. I will talk to Mr. Xiao." Yin Pan was a little surprised and was stunned. She thought that there was something that made Qin Sheng dissatisfied. She was very concerned about this job. After all, not everyone could become the assistant of the future crown prince of the group. Moreover, it could be seen that compared to Wei Xiaoxia, Qin Sheng valued her more. "Chairman Qin, did I do something wrong?" Yin Pan asked carefully. Women were always so sensitive. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Don't overthink it. I may have to go to Gansu tomorrow evening to deal with some private affairs. I don't know when I'll be back yet, so you can go back first." Hearing this, Yin Pan was completely relieved. After thinking about it carefully, she realized that she had thought too much. If Qin Sheng was not satisfied with her, he would not have asked her to take a paid leave. Hao Lei was confused and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you going to Gansu all of a sudden?" "There is something urgent that needs to be dealt with. You and Lao Chong will go with me. If it were not for Uncle Lin, we might have been there now." Qin Sheng frowned slightly. He also hoped that nothing would happen to Nangong before he went there. Hao Lei and Chang Baji looked at each other. It meant that things were a little serious. After dinner, they rushed to the tea house in Xiujiang, which was also the place where Lu Changxi had asked Qin Sheng to have tea last time. At this time, Lu Changxi was already waiting inside. After seeing Lu Changxi, Qin Sheng said casually, "Thank you so much for today's matter, Brother Lu." He also had many ways to deal with this matter, but he had to owe others a favor. Nowadays, he was not the same as before. He had to return the favor with other things. As for Lu Changxi, he did not need to be afraid. Anyway, he owed so much, and the two families were in a cooperative relationship. There would always be a way to make it up to him. Lu Changxi laughed and said, "It's just a small matter. Why are you thanking me?" "Will they come?" Qin Sheng changed the topic and asked. He had informed them through Lu Changshi, and they had already agreed. As for whether they would come or not, Qin Sheng did not care. It would be better if they did not come. When Uncle Lin came out tomorrow, it would be the beginning of his revenge on these two families. This matter was already out of Lu Changshi's control. It was completely under Qin Sheng's control. At that time, he had already given Tan Feng and Zhang Jinlei face to meet Qin Sheng. Fortunately, Qin Sheng was not angry. It's up to them whether they come or not. After 8 o'clock, we will leave directly, Lu Changshi said carelessly. Qin Sheng smiled and said nothing. Sometimes when he thought about it, it was actually quite good to be a local tyrant like the Lu family. They had deep connections in the local area and had people in the imperial court. As long as they did not deliberately seek trouble, they could completely live a carefree life. For a family like the Qin family, which was rooted in Suzhou City, it was like a boat sailing against the current. If they did not move forward, they would retreat. Moreover, they had to be careful in every step. There were too many interests and relationships involved. If they were slightly careless, they would lose everything. Before 8 o'clock, when it was just past 7:40, Lu Changshi's confidant pushed the door open and came in. Brother Lu, they are here. Qin Sheng and Lu Changshi's expressions changed slightly at the same time. They finally came. This was the largest box in the whole tea house. At this moment, apart from Lu Changshi, there were only Chang Baji and Hao Lei. Yin Pan had already returned to Jindi Furong Shijia. Qin Sheng asked her to go there to take care of Annie Wang and Xin Xin, just to accompany them to relieve their boredom. After all, she was not on such an occasion. Not long after, the door of the box was pushed open again. 6 men from the Tan family and the Zhang family walked into the box slowly. In front of them were 2 men over 50 years old, who looked a little tired. They were Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshan. Behind them were Tan Feng, Tan Zhen, Zhang Jinlei, and Wu Song, whom Qin Sheng had met before. They were all young people who were in charge of the 2 families. It was quite a grand show. Except for them, there was no one else. With a smile on his face, Qin Sheng stared at these people from the Tan family and the Zhang family thoughtfully. He did not intend to stand up at all. Now he was totally confident. Moreover, why should he care about the feelings of the Tan family and the Zhang family? In the beginning, did they care about the feelings of the Lin family? As a local tyrant, Lu Changshi had met the elders of the Tan family and the Zhang family several times. He smiled happily and smoothed things over. Uncle Tan, Uncle Zhang, you are here. Please take a seat. Tan Feng, Tan Zhen, Zhang Jinlei, and Wu Song had all met Qin Sheng before. They knew this young man's temper better. They looked at Qin Sheng with complicated expressions. Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshan looked calm. If it were in the past, of course, they would not take a young man like Qin Sheng seriously. They were not on the same level at all. However, in the face of reality today, they had to lower their heads. This young man named Qin Sheng was not scary. What was scary was his background. They had to take him seriously. After all, they were not even qualified to meet his elders. Tan Hongping said politely, "Thank you, young Master Lu." By calling him young Master Lu, he gave Lu Changshi enough face. Only then did the elders of the Tan family and the Zhang family sit down conveniently. The others all stood behind them. Today, they came with full sincerity. As for whether they could come to an agreement or not, it would depend on Qin Sheng's mood. If Qin Sheng wanted to humiliate the elders of the 2 families, they would not tolerate it at all. Qin Sheng had met Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshan before. However, it was when he was young. He had long forgotten them. After all, at that time, the 2 families and the Lin family were in a cooperative relationship. After they sat down, Qin Sheng took the initiative to say, "2 old masters, I finally meet you. I thought you didn't want to see me at all." Qin Sheng's opening was provocative. If I had not been too busy recently, I would have gone to Beijing to visit young Master Qin a few days ago. In the end, it was delayed until today. I hope young Master Qin won't blame me, Zhang Deshan said politely. His attitude was very humble. Originally, he wanted to call Qin Sheng Little Qin to build a relationship. After all, he also remembered this adopted son of the Lin family. However, He was afraid that it would be too abrupt. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Really?" Tan Hongping smiled apologetically and said, "We do want to see young Master Qin, but we are afraid to disturb him. So today we have to thank young Master Lu for giving us such an opportunity." Tan Hongping said this because he wanted Lu Changxi to say a few words for them. Unfortunately, Lu Changxi did not want to get involved in this mess. He smiled and drank his tea as if he did not hear it. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Uncle Tan, the way you talk is different. I'm afraid you don't want to see me at all." "How is that possible?" Zhang Deshun quickly denied. Qin Sheng said with some contempt, "I remember meeting you too when I was a child. At that time, I did not expect that we would meet like this. Of course, I also did not expect that there would be such things later. I remember that Uncle Lin valued you two very much at that time." Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun were a little embarrassed. At that time, they had done a good job, but they had never expected that there would be hidden dangers today. If they had a choice, they would definitely not harm a Lin family. This kind of atmosphere made Tan Feng, who had a bad temper, feel very uncomfortable. After all, he saw a young man who was younger than him casually bully his father. Therefore, Tan Feng snorted and said, "Young Master Qin, what's the use of saying these things now? You want to see our parents. Today, they're also here. Just tell us directly, what do we need to do to let us go?" As soon as Tan Feng finished speaking, Qin Sheng looked angry. As a junior, it was not his turn to speak today. Therefore, Qin Sheng said very rudely, "Oh, it seems that you are in charge of the Tan family. Well, then I'll be straightforward. Let us go. When did I say that I would let you two go?" Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun's faces changed instantly when he was so direct and domineering. Tan Hongping stood up directly, turned around, and slapped his eldest son Tan Feng's face without hesitation. This slap was full of strength. At the same time, he scolded, "Shut up, I'm not dead yet. Since when is it your turn to speak?" Tan Feng was stunned. He did not expect that his father would slap him in front of everyone. However, he did not dare to be angry at all. He could only gnash his teeth and say, "Sorry, Dad. I was wrong." Tan Hongping continued, "Apologize to young Master Qin now." Tan Feng did not hesitate. He lowered his head and said, "Young Master Qin, I'm sorry. Don't be angry." Chapter 571. Impossible children's mistakes could be forgiven or ignored according to the situation. After all, their values were not fully formed, which was why children under the age of 14 did not have to bear criminal responsibility. However, the mistakes made by adults must be caused by some kind of motivation, such as emotions, interests, and so on. Therefore, they had to pay the price. Qin Sheng was not a gentleman who would return good for evil. Hence, he would definitely not forgive the mistakes made by the Tan and Zhang families just like that. If that was the case, the cost of making mistakes in life would be too low. Anyone could trample on many principles and rules at will. Besides, Qin Sheng was not qualified to forgive them on behalf of the Lin family. Then it would compensate for Uncle Lin's suffering in prison and Annie Wang and Xinxin's suffering. Therefore, even though he met the elders of the Tan and Zhang families today, Qin Sheng did not intend to forgive them or let them go. He just wanted to meet these two old foxes and test their bargaining chips and bottom line. At this moment, Tan Feng took the initiative to jump out to provoke Qin Sheng, and then he was slapped by his father, Tan Hongping. Qin Sheng felt that this was like acting. Tan Feng was already a man in his 30s. If he still did not know these rules, then he would have lived in vain all these years. Even if he did not meet Qin Sheng, he would have met other people to teach him a lesson. Moreover, did Tan Hongping not tell these juniors what to do before he came? If he did not, it could only be said that they did not take Qin Sheng seriously. But did they really not take it seriously? Therefore, Qin Sheng looked at them with a smile, not taking it seriously at all. Even Lu Changxi felt that it was a bit too much. "Master Qin, Tan Feng is not sensible. Please don't take it to heart," Tan Hongping said respectfully. Qin Sheng replied bluntly, "Uncle Tan, are you playing a trick?" After the small episode, just now, the other juniors of the Tan and Zhang families did not dare to say anything. Now, they felt that the man in front of them was a devil. As long as he was unhappy, He could kill them at any time. It was better not to offend him. Tan Hongping was embarrassed, but he just smiled. It was not a trick. They did not want to use such poor acting skills to gain Qin Sheng's sympathy, which was obviously impossible. Facing a young man like Qin Sheng, the two old men in their 50s who were going to be over 60 years old were so meek and submissive, which made people feel sorry for them. However, their glory over the years was built on the pain of others, so they did not deserve any sympathy. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Uncle Tan, Uncle Zhang, I really want to know what kind of purpose you had when you set up a trap to frame Uncle Lin a few years ago. After all, he was your good friend for many years. You really stabbed him hard and mercilessly. He really wanted to figure out these past events." Qin Sheng smiled coldly. Zhang Deshun felt somewhat guilty and relieved at the same time. He said, "Qin Sheng, to be honest, we have always felt guilty about what happened in the past. At that time, we were really blinded by benefits. If we could do it all over again, we would never do that." Zhang Deshun no longer addressed Qin Sheng as young Master Qin. Instead, he faced Qin Sheng directly and addressed him as Qin Sheng to let Qin Sheng feel his sincerity. "Really?" Qin Sheng laughed. Obviously, he did not believe it at all. He said disdainfully, "You still feel guilty? If you feel guilty, why didn't you go to see Uncle Lin these years? If you went to see Uncle Lin and got his forgiveness, or you took the initiative to help the mother and daughter of the Lin family, maybe there would not be this meeting today, and there would not be these recent things." Tan Hongping immediately replied, "It's not that we don't want to go, but we don't dare to go. After what happened, we can't face old Lin." "Haha, really haha." Qin Sheng held the teacup and blew gently, as if he was listening to a joke, and ridiculed them unscrupulously. "At this time, you are still full of lies. Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? Do you think I don't know who you are? Before I deal with you two families, shouldn't I check your background?" Qin Sheng said honestly, "If it were not for my appearance, if it were not for the current situation, I am afraid you would not feel guilty at all. You would still be living comfortably, regardless of the Lin family's fate. Anyway, at that time, even if Uncle Lin comes out, an old man over 50 years old with nothing, what can he do to you? Can he take revenge on you? You can kill him at any time, am I right?" Zhang Deshun quibbled. "Qin Sheng, we really don't think so. We're still thinking about how to make it up to old Lin." "I don't believe you," Qin Sheng replied rudely. "In the eyes of vampires like you, this society is so realistic and cruel. There's no pity or sympathy. If it weren't for the fact that your two families were involved in the turmoil caused by the ruler back then, I'm afraid that you would still fight with me to the death. You wouldn't even come to see me until there's a winner. The only thing you hate is that the Lin family has an adopted son like me, and my real identity is so powerful, and then I kill you all when you're unprepared." Qin Sheng said mercilessly. Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun did not speak. The atmosphere was completely under Qin Sheng's control, and their momentum was completely crushed by Qin Sheng. They did not think so, but the juniors of the Tan and Zhang families all thought so. Tan Hongping did not want to continue to be entangled in the past. After all, what had happened, and it could not be changed. He only wanted to solve the current storm. "Qin Sheng, no matter what, old Lin will come out soon. When he comes out, we will apologize to him, no matter what price we have to pay, as long as he can forgive us," Tan Hongping said sincerely. Qin Sheng laughed out loud as he said, "The older, the wiser. Uncle Tan, I've really learned something today. I'm afraid that if you think that you can't get through me, you'd better switch to the second route. So let me tell you, it's impossible." Zhang Deshun said, "Qin Sheng, we are not as scheming as you think. The reason we can come today is to solve this problem. Do you dare not come?" Qin Sheng said bluntly. Zhang Deshun and Tan Hongping were speechless after hearing Qin Sheng's words. Who asked Qin Sheng to speak so sharply? Tan Hongping smiled bitterly and said, "Qin Sheng, then say it. As long as you and the Lin family can forgive us, we can pay any price." "Are you sure?" Qin Sheng asked. Zhang Deshun did not say anything, but said in a low voice, "Everything can be discussed. If I let you two stay in prison for 10 years, and if I let your companies go bankrupt and liquidate, Is that okay? I think I'm already merciful. Qin Sheng squinted and smiled. Hearing this, Zhang Jinlei finally stood up and said, Qin Sheng, you want to fight to the death, and you have no intention of letting us go. This time, neither Zhang Deshun nor Tan Hongping said anything to stop Zhang Jinlei, unlike Tan Feng, who was directly slapped in the face when he opened his mouth. This time, Qin Sheng's attitude was more playful. He chuckled and said, Okay, since you are here, tell me what you can offer. If it is really tempting, I can consider it. The whole Tan and Zhang families were waiting for this sentence, which was also their purpose of coming here. As expected, everyone's expression obviously improved. Zhang Deshun looked at Tan Hongping, indicating that he should say it. Before coming here, the two families had already discussed what they had to offer to ensure that they could survive this crisis. Tan Hongping said slowly, 200 million in cash, plus 10% of the shares of our two groups. Young Master Qin, this is all we can offer. Take it as compensation for the grievances Lao Lin and the others have suffered in the past 2 years. If Lao Lin's original company continued to operate, it would be worth about this now. Lu Changxi shook his head and smiled bitterly. The Tan and Zhang families had chosen the wrong path. If they wanted to compare who was richer, the Qin family, known as the Hidden Rich in Sijio City, was much richer than the two families. For most people, 200 million in cash and 10% of the whole group's shares were astronomical figures. But for the Qin family, it was really nothing because the Qin family was really rich. Qin Sheng snorted coldly and smiled without saying anything. Anyone could see that Qin Sheng was very dissatisfied and very angry. Wu Song said impatiently, Young Master Qin, this is already not a small figure. What do you think? Throw money at me. Only the two of you have money. Others might waver. But unfortunately, you met me, Qin Sheng said with a chuckle. It seems that coming here today was a mistake. You only have this bit of bargaining chips. Zhang Deshun clenched his teeth and said, 500 million in cash, 20% of the two groups' shares. This was their final bottom line. One must know that for the whole Tan and Zhang families, this could be said to be a serious injury. 500 million in cash was not scary. They had many ways to get this money, but 30% of the shares could be said to be almost half of the shares of their two families. After all, such a big group, they were not the only shareholders. Tan Feng, Tan Zhun, Zhang Jinlei, and Wu Song all felt that this time, Qin Sheng would definitely waver. This was an astronomical figure, which had already exceeded Lin Shi's net worth by many times in the past. Could it be that this was still not enough to compensate the Lin family? Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun also stared at Qin Sheng, wanting to read this man's answer. Qin Sheng was silent. He was silent for a long time. Finally, Qin Sheng slowly stood up and said, Do you really think that you can achieve everything with money? It was like that in the past. Is it still the same today? Impossible. After saying that, Qin Sheng directly left because he could not see the real sincerity of these people. The people of the Tan and Zhang families were dumbfounded. They did not expect the result to be like this. Qin Sheng did not give them any more chances. He directly left. They parted on bad terms. All the people of the Tan and Zhang families instantly became nervous. If Qin Sheng really did not agree, then the two families would really be in danger. Chang Baji and Hao Lei followed Qin Sheng and left, but Lu Changxi was not in a hurry to leave. Lu Changxi put down his teacup and said with a smile, Uncle Tan, Uncle Zhang, do you know why Qin Sheng rejected you? Tan Hongping frowned and asked why. Because he is not short of money. In his eyes, the little assets of your two families are completely negligible. After all, they're the major shareholders of a few of the top 10 banks in the country. Do you think they have money? Lu Changxi laughed. Chapter 572. Welcome home. Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun disappointed Qin Sheng and Lu Changxi very much. Last time, he braved the risk of making Qin Sheng angry and took Tan Feng and Zhang Jinlei to see Qin Sheng. At that time, Qin Sheng had already told them that he was not short of money. The combined wealth of the two families was not even a fraction of his family's. However, he did not expect that the solution of the Tan and Zhang families today was still to spend money to get rid of the disaster. Lu Changxi was speechless. Did they really think that money could solve everything? That was for the poor. For the rich, especially those who were much richer than you, money was just a number and it was meaningless. The negotiation failed. This made Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun feel like dying ashes. Was there really no other solution? Tan Hongping did not give up and said, "Child Lu, help us and say something good for us. As long as you can help us get through this difficulty, we will definitely not let you down." "Do you think I'm also short of money?" Lu Changxi sneered. He helped them this time because the Lu family could not let go of that favor. Zhang Deshun said nervously, "Child Lu, that is not what we mean. Help us think of a way." Lu Changxi let out a long sigh and said, "I have already helped you a lot. Unfortunately, you did not cherish the opportunity. The last time we met, you wanted to use money to open the door of Qinsheng. This time, it is still the same. Tell me, what should I do?" Zhang Deshun sat on the chair and said with a dull look in his eyes, "Can I only be trampled on by others?" Zhang Jinlei gritted his teeth and said, "Dad, at most, we will fight to the death with him." Lu Changxi laughed and scrupulously. Obviously, Qin Sheng's departure made this group of people panic. So he said disdainfully, "To the death with him? Do you have the strength and qualification to do so?" Lu Changxi really did not want to stay with these mediocre people anymore. He let them think nonsense. He had given them 2 chances and wasted them both. He could only say that they deserved it. Lu Changxi wanted to leave, and the others did not dare to stop him. They could only let him leave. After Qin Sheng and Lu Changxi left, only the men of the Tan and Zhang families were left in the box. They did not leave directly. Instead, they were deep in thought, thinking about how to get through this crisis. "Dad, what should we do? Could it be that we can only do this?" Wu Song gritted his teeth and asked. He did not want to lose this wealth that he had obtained with great difficulty. Zhang Deshun smiled bitterly and said, "If it really doesn't work, I can only let old Tan and I bear the price. As long as you can all be well." Zhang Jinlei said helplessly, "Is this the only way? What else can we do?" Tan Hongping felt relieved. Who would have thought that the matter that had already been sealed in the coffin back then would have such a sequela? Tan Zhun hesitated for a moment and said, "Dad, why don't we try again? Uncle Lin will come out tomorrow. At that time, we can go and beg Uncle Lin. As long as we lower our status and give them enough compensation, I think Uncle Lin will definitely forgive us. For the Lin family to be where it is today, our 2 families are the instigators. Can he really forgive us? I'm afraid he might even want to kill us." Tan Hongping did not hold out much hope for this. However, Zhang Deshun said, "We have to give it a try." Elder Lin was too soft-hearted and not ruthless enough. That was why he fell back then. Even if it doesn't work out in the end, we'll just accept it. It's just 10 years in prison. Anyway, I have no regrets in this life. Hearing this, Tan Hongping had no choice but to say, "Let's give it a try." Everyone looked at each other. This was the last way. Of course, they had already prepared for the worst. When Qin Sheng returned to Jindi Furong Shijia, Annie Wang was eating fruits and watching TV in the living room. She seemed to be in a very good mood today, and her face was full of smiles. The nanny was teaching the 2 beauties how to make soup in the kitchen. Yin Pan and Xin Xin were very interested in it. Xin Xin wanted to learn cooking so that she could cook for her parents in the future. Yin Pan didn't want to always order takeout or eat in restaurants. It was more fun to cook by herself. After Qin Sheng came back, they came out of the kitchen. "Brother, you're back," Xin Xin said happily. Qin Sheng nodded with a smile. Then he saw that the girl's hands were full of oil stains, so he asked her to wash her hands first. "Yin Pan, there's nothing else. You and Lao Chong can go back first." Since there was nothing else to do, Qin Sheng asked Yin Pan to go back to the hotel to have a rest. After saying goodbye to Annie Wang and Xin Xin, Yin Pan left Jindi Furong Shijia with Lao Chong and Hao Lei. After the others left, Qin Sheng sat in the living room and reported to Annie Wang. "Auntie, I met Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun today." Wang Li's expression changed slightly. She wanted to say something, but she just sighed in the end. Her once very familiar friends eventually became hateful enemies. It was really fate that made fun of people. For these two men, Wang Li had scolded them countless times. In recent years, she had been hating them. She wanted them to die immediately. However, when Lao Lin was about to come out, Wang Li had no interest in them. Perhaps for the current Wang Li, as long as her men could be reunited and safe, she would be satisfied. Qin Sheng continued. They told me that no matter what price they had to pay, as long as the Lin family could forgive them. Although Wang Li was no longer as glorious as before, she knew better than anyone what was going on. So she chuckled and said, "Sheng-er, I know that they didn't really want the Lin family to forgive them. They're just afraid of you. Annie, if the conditions they offered were tempting enough, would you forgive them?" Qin Sheng asked casually. Wang Li said honestly, "I won't, but I will listen to your Uncle Lin's decision." Qin Sheng said thoughtfully, "Well, let's wait for Uncle Lin to come out." Uncle Lin would come out tomorrow, so half a day was not a big deal. At dawn, Qin Sheng and Xin pushed Wang Li for a walk in the community. When Changbaji and Hao Lei arrived, they went home and had breakfast together. The atmosphere at breakfast was quite relaxed. Hao Lei and Xin joked with each other. Qin Sheng interrupted and teased them once in a while. Wang Li and Lao Chong just smiled and ate. Qin Sheng and the others were not worried about anything, but Wang Li and Xin were still a little worried, fearing that something unexpected might happen. At 8:30, they set off for the provincial high school, which was not far away. When walking to the gate of the community, Qin Sheng looked back at Annie Wang and Xin behind him. He hoped that when he came back here, the family of four would be reunited. In the provincial high school, Lawyer Zheng and the others had already arrived. The relatives and friends of the Lin family and the Wang family had also arrived. Lu Changxi did not come today because he had something to do, but he sent his confidant over. As expected, no one from the Tan family and the Zhang family came today. The court was held. 1 hour, 2 hours. When the presiding judge said the words "release in court," the spectators cheered. Everyone cheered, including Qin Sheng. Although he had already known that this would be the result, when he heard these words, Qin Sheng still could not restrain his inner excitement. As for Wang Li and Xin, they had already hugged each other and cried. The others around them were congratulating and comforting them. They had waited for this day for several years, and now they finally got their wish. Lin Shi, who was standing in the middle, also had tears on his face. He thought that his experiences in the past few years had made him look past everything, but he still could not control his emotions. He suddenly felt a little confused and at a loss, but also a little excited and happy. No matter what, the darkest part of his life was finally coming to an end. During the spring festival, Qin Sheng told him that he would do everything possible to reverse the case and clear all the injustice. At that time, Lin Shi still did not believe it. Even a few days ago, he still did not believe it. Today, the moment finally came. Lin Shi suddenly felt that it was so unreal, like a dream. However, this was the truth. At this point, the family was finally going to be reunited. Half an hour later, when everyone saw Lin Shi, who had already changed into casual clothes, they still hadn't recovered from the shock. Lin Shi slowly walked towards them with a faint smile on his face. Everyone stood there and waited for him, waiting for him to walk over step by step. Every step he took showed how difficult it was. A few years passed in the blink of an eye. However, time had left traces on Lin Shi's face. He was much older than before, and there was a lot more white hair on his head. He had also changed a lot. In the past, he had a strong aura. Whether he was facing business partners or provincial leaders, his every move had a kind of convincing momentum. Now, he had long lost that kind of momentum. Instead, he gave people a feeling of easygoing and mellow. A few years ago, when Lin Shi had walked into that prison, he had been unwilling, angry, and afraid. Now, when he walked out, he felt relieved, reborn, and lucky. Xin was the first one who could not bear it anymore. She directly rushed over and held Lin Shi tightly. She sobbed and said, "Dad," Lin Shi said with a little heartache, "Silly girl." He did not comfort his daughter, but let her vent these years of grievances. As a father, He owed her too much. Wang Li's hands trembled a little. "Old Lin, I've made you suffer." "Lin," she said with some guilt. She had really suffered too much. At that time, everyone had already given up, but she still continued to run around for him, which made her very touched. Lin, she felt that his greatest achievement in this life was not how successful he was in business, but that he had married a wife like Wang Li and had a daughter like Xin. Hearing this, Wang Li bit her lower lip and did not speak. Grievances? Not all. No one said anything. They just watched such a touching scene. Some people were already secretly wiping their tears. After Wang Li and Xin had calmed down, Qin Sheng said, "Uncle, welcome home." Lin, she patted his shoulder gently and said, "Good boy, you've worked hard." Qin Sheng shook his head and chuckled. This was what he should do. This was what he owed the Lin family. If he had been there at that time, perhaps such a tragedy would not have happened. At that time, he should have been there, but unfortunately, he missed it. When he came back and found out about this, he did not know how regretful he was. The Lin family had raised him for 20 years, but he disappeared when the Lin family needed him the most. Fortunately, God gave him a chance to make up for it. Now, everything was finally over. Chapter 573. What kind of attitude was that? What was a reunion? That was what the Lin family used to be like. Today, everyone in the Lin family was celebrating with the Orchid and Orchid family. The storm a few years ago had destroyed the whole Lin family and made Lin Shi, who used to be very famous, fall to the bottom of the valley. Fortunately, the Lin family adopted Qin Sheng, which gave them the opportunity to make a comeback today. Life was really full of surprises and surprises. The ups and downs, the sorrows and the joys and sorrows were only a matter of a few years. This was not a happy place. After finishing all the procedures, everyone accompanied Lin Shi out of the provincial high school. Outside was the Zhujiang district that he was very familiar with, but compared with a few years ago, it was more prosperous here. Lin Shi sighed with emotion as he looked at a certain tall building in the distance. That was once built by him, but now it had already changed owners. Although Qin Sheng did not have much contact with the relatives of the Lin family and the Wang family, he knew them more or less. They had no feelings for him, but they definitely had feelings for Uncle Lin. Therefore, Qin Sheng said that he would prepare a welcome banquet at the Hyatt Hotel at noon and hoped that everyone would be there. Everyone agreed readily and went directly to the Hyatt Hotel. Qin Sheng had already asked the hotel to arrange for Yin Pan and Hao Lei to be in charge of this small matter. Lawyer Zhang's team had also gone back to the hotel to rest. Qin Sheng would thank them at the welcome banquet later. On the way back to Jindy Hibiscus World, Lin Shi did not speak much. Perhaps he was adapting to this new environment, or perhaps he was thinking about the past. No one disturbed him, letting him slowly think about it and adapt to it. Accompanying Lin Shi home were the immediate family members of the Lin family and the Wang family, as well as Lin Shi's trusted subordinates. Everyone had always been close to Lin Shi, so when they heard that the court would reopen, they were very excited. In the end, everyone was happy. Before Lin Shi went to prison, the Lin family had moved to Jindy Hibiscus World. Although the environment was not as comfortable as the villa in Zhujiang Mansion, it was still a mansion in Zhujiang. It was also the only thing Lin Shi left for the Lin family. He did not want them to live without a fixed place. There was not much change in the community, nor in his home. After entering the door, Lin Shi just said that it was good to be home and sat on the sofa to chat with everyone. Then, he went to take a shower and changed into fresh clothes. In the living room, Qin Sheng chatted with the others. The direct descendants of the Lin family and the Wang family were full of praise for Qin Sheng. Some of them had not seen Qin Sheng for many years. Now that Lin Shi, the adopted son, could help Lin Shi turn the tables on his own, it was obvious that he had great power and background. They had to pay attention to him. It was not until Lin Shi came back that Qin Sheng left the crowd. "Lass, when are you going back to school?" Qin Sheng asked casually. During this period of time, Xin had missed a lot of courses. Therefore, Qin Sheng still hoped that she could continue to complete her studies and work hard to take the postgraduate entrance examination to Beijing. Xin had already thought about it. She smiled and said, I want to accompany my parents for a few days and then go back to school. Qin Sheng thought for a while and said, Uncle Lin has just come back. At that time, there will be many friends coming to visit him. I'm afraid that he will be too tired to adapt. Then what should we do? Xian frowned. She felt that her brother was right. Qin Sheng said directly, I've already made up my mind. Tomorrow, you will accompany Uncle Lin and Annie Wong to Sanya for a week. Accompany them to relax, so that they won't be disturbed by outsiders. Brother, aren't you going? Xian nodded. She had no objection to her brother's arrangement. Moreover, she had not gone out to play for a long time. Qin Sheng said honestly, I will go to Gansu in the afternoon. After I finish my work, I will find time to accompany you, where you can take Uncle Lin and Annie Wong to Shanghai. I will arrange the rest. Xian was not unreasonable. She knew that the current brother was not the brother in the past. He had a lot of things to do. So she said, Okay, then I will listen to you. They did not stay in Jindi Furong Shurjia for long. When it was almost time, they got up and went to the Hyatt Hotel. After all, they could not let others wait for too long. In the Hyatt Hotel, at the welcoming banquet, the Lin family did not inform others. Maybe it was their friends who informed each other. In the end, there were 6 tables of people which looked very lively. Qin Sheng first thanked everyone on behalf of the Lin family. He specially thanked Lawyer Zhang's team from Beijing and so on. Then, Lin Shi appeared and sighed with emotion. He talked about how he started his business in the past, the glory that followed, the incident that happened a few years ago, and his life in prison these few years. Then, he talked about what happened in the past few days. There were too many hardships, too many setbacks and tribulations, but the ending was still good. This was already enough, and he was also content. In the end, Lin Shi specially thanked his wife and daughter, saying that he was sorry for not fulfilling his responsibility as a husband and a father. He would make it up to them in the future. Of course, in the end, he especially thanked Qin Sheng. He said that he adopted Qin Sheng because he was destined to be with old Master Qin. He did not think too much about it. Moreover, they did not have a son. They had always raised Qin Sheng as their own son. Qin Sheng had never let them down, but he never thought that there would be such a day. He did not expect that Qin Sheng would clear his grievances, so he wanted to thank Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng, who was below the stage, smiled embarrassedly. Good and evil karma all had reincarnation. If the Lin family had not adopted him out of kindness, these things would not have happened today. If the Lin family had adopted him and treated him badly, these things would not have happened today. Good karma begets good results, like the Lin family. Evil karma begets evil results, like the Tan family and the Zhang family. The heavenly Tao reincarnated. But who would the heavens spare? The welcoming banquet went on in this touching and lively atmosphere. Many people came to toast Lin Shi and Qin Sheng. Since Lin Shi had just been released from prison and he was old, everyone let him do as he pleased. However, they did not spare Qin Sheng. They forced him to drink a lot of wine. Qin Sheng was in a good mood, so he did not refuse. Of course, Hale also helped him drink. Looking at Qin Sheng, who was surrounded by people, Yin Pan admired him more or less. She did not expect that this crown prince had such a past. No wonder she did not know that the big boss of the group had a son. It was estimated that only a few people knew about this, so Yin Pan knew what to do. She would not reveal anything, not even to Xiao Yusen. When the welcoming banquet ended, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone went back to Jindi Furong Shurjia. The lively atmosphere was gone, and only family affection was left. Qin Sheng and his friends had booked tickets to Gansu. They would leave soon. Although Qin Sheng also wanted to stay with Uncle Lin, he could not delay Nangong's matter. At noon this day, Qin Sheng called Nangong again. The call finally went through. It did not occur to her that it would be Qin Sheng, Chang Baji, and the others who would support her. After telling Qin Sheng the address and chatting with him for a while, she hung up the phone. In the study of the Lin family, Lin Shi and Qin Sheng were alone. Both of them reeked of alcohol. The housekeeper was making soup for them to sober up. Qin Sheng had already told the Lin family that he would leave in a while. Although Lin Shi and Wang Li were surprised and reluctant, especially Lin Shi, who had not had a good chat with Qin Sheng. They knew that Qin Sheng was busy now, so they did not ask him to stay. Moreover, Qin Sheng also said that he would spend some time with them after he finished his business in Gansu. When I have time, I will go to Beijing to visit your father. Anyway, it is all thanks to him this time, Lin, she said sincerely. Of course, he knew what was going on. Without Qin Sheng's father's support, it was impossible for Qin Sheng to mobilize such powerful resources with only his ability. Of course, Lin, she already knew the identity of Qin Sheng's father very well. Until now, it was hard for him to imagine that Qin Sheng's biological father was him. It seemed a bit too magical and too unbelievable. Sometimes, Lin, she had to think about why old Master Qin brought Qin Sheng to Xian. Qin Sheng said with a smile, "He also wants to see you, Uncle Lin, but he is too busy, so he can only wait for you in Beijing. I think Uncle Lin and he should have a lot to talk about." "Then I'm looking forward to it," Lin, she said with a smile. He also wanted to meet the long-rumored tycoon. After pondering for a while, Lin, she said, "Shenger, you're not who you used to be. I can't help you with many things. I can only hope that you'll be careful in the future. After all, the environment you're in and your current identity are very complicated." After all, Lin, she had been glorious and experienced a lot of things, so he reminded Qin Sheng like this. Qin Sheng nodded silently and said, "Uncle Lin, I know. Well, I believe you can handle it well, but I'm afraid that you will be under too much pressure," Lin, she said with some distress. Qin Sheng smiled and shook his head. How could there be no pressure? The higher the position, the greater the pressure. It was just a matter of how much pressure there was. After talking about these trivial things, Qin Sheng took the initiative to tell Lin Shi about what had happened with the Tan and Zhang families recently. He wanted to know what Uncle Lin's attitude toward the Tan and Zhang families was. Lin, she was lost in thought again. This was a problem he had to face. After all, it was the Tan and Zhang families that had made him who he was today. Tan Hongping and Zhang Deshun were his business partners in the past, and they had a good relationship in private. But he did not expect that they would set him up, make his company go bankrupt, and send him to prison. Now, with Qin Sheng's help, he finally got out of prison. Qin Sheng had also told him what kind of situation the two families were in and what had happened during this period. Qin Sheng also had the ability to take revenge on them. As long as he was willing, he could hit them when they were down and kill them. But now, the Tan and Zhang families were begging for mercy. Moreover, they offered a bargaining chip that was enough to shake many people. A total of 500 million in cash and 20% of the shares of the two companies. This could be said to be the biggest bargaining chip they could offer. Then he would choose to accept these bargaining chips and then forgive the Tan and Zhang families, resolving the grievances between them and never crossing paths again. Or he did not need their compensation and only wanted them to pay the price for what they had done in the past. It depended on how he would consider and choose. Chapter 574. Temptation and News. Lin, she was not a saint, so he hated these two people to the core at the beginning and wished they would die a horrible death. What was more painful than being stabbed in the back by a friend? Lin, she almost gave up on himself because of the huge gap in his life. After all, he used to be a big shot in Xi'an City with hundreds of millions of yuan and a happy family. Now his company went bankrupt, his family broke up, and he became a prisoner. However, after a few years in prison, Lin, she completely calmed down and let go of many things. He was no longer the person he was when he first came to prison. Therefore, Lin, she had to reconsider the past. In the end, Lin, she didn't give him a definite answer. He just said, "Let me think about it." Okay. Qin Sheng nodded. He didn't want Uncle Lin to give him so much pressure as soon as he got out of prison. Then Qin Sheng said, "Uncle Lin, the Tan and Zhang families are a bit anxious now. I refuse their reconciliation. Now that you've just been released, they may play the emotional card with you. Besides, many friends and colleagues will come to see you. I want you to have a good rest first, so ask Xin to accompany you and Annie Wong to Sanya to relax. As for the rest, we'll talk about it when you come back." Lin, she didn't have any objection to Qin Sheng's arrangement. He also wanted to get used to those trifles, so he nodded and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you. Uncle, I'll go to Gansu first. When I finish my work there, I'll go to Sanya to meet you if time permits. I've also made arrangements in Sanya. They'll contact you then, Qin Sheng said with a smile. No matter what, Uncle Lin finally got out of prison. She didn't have any objection to Qin Sheng's arrangement. He just told Qin Sheng to pay attention to his safety and take care of himself. After coming out of the study, Qin Sheng said goodbye to Annie Wang and Xin Xin and left Jindi Furong Shurjia with Changbaji and Hao Lei. Annie Wang and Xin Xin were a bit reluctant to see Qin Sheng go, so was Lin Shi. He wanted to have a good talk with Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng did not dare to waste too much time, fearing that something might happen to Nangong. Moreover, he still did not know what Nangong was going to do in Gansu. He had been so busy these 2 days that he had forgotten to ask. At the junction of Xinjiang and Gansu, he was driving aimlessly. Ever since they left the no-man's land that day, they had come straight to this place. This was the last place. If they still could not find Mr. Ding, then they could only return empty-handed. However, before he reached the place, Bach got lost again. Fortunately, this time it was not a deserted area, and he could only rely on his memory to find the way. At the same time, he asked the residents along the way. Nangong's patience towards he had reached its limit. Along the way, they had suffered a lot, and if they still could not find him, Nangong would completely explode. Stop the car. Bach was about to follow the route that one of his friends had told him to take when Nangong suddenly shouted loudly. Bach was dumbfounded. He looked exhausted and upset, but he had been enduring it. Hearing Nangong shout, Bach did not say anything and stopped the car. After stopping the car, Bach did not ask what happened. He got out of the car and smoked by the roadside. He had quit smoking for a long time. It was too tiring and annoying, so he could only smoke to refresh himself. Nangong, who had changed into black sportswear and her figure was completely exposed, asked angrily, "Do you know the place or not? We have been going around in this broken place for a day. If you don't know, I will find someone else." "Fine, I will find someone else. Do you think I want to follow you around? I was having a good time in the desert, but you suddenly appeared and insisted on looking for Mr. Ding. Then you made me follow you around for so long. I have had enough." Bahi threw the cigarette directly on the ground and responded loudly, not admitting defeat at all. Wasn't it just being beaten? He could not even count how many times he had been beaten along the way, let alone quarreling. He had had enough of this stinky woman's temper. She was really a tomboy. No one would dare to want her in the future. Nangong faced Bahi and said, "Did I ask you to come? It was your uncle who asked you to come, not me. If you want to leave, get out of my sight now, as far as you can. I will find it myself." Bahi laughed and went straight to the car to take his luggage. "Okay, you can take your time to find it. I will go back to Ordo's and wait for your good news." Bach did not look like he was joking at all. Nangong had no choice but to let him leave. She had no intention of asking him to stay. She felt that Bach did not even know where Mr. Ding was. What's more, they were coming from Xian. She did not need Bach, this useless burden. Bai took his luggage and continued to move forward. It was getting dark, and although this broken place was not a deserted area, there were not many cars on the road. Even if there were cars, they might not stop. After all, the people here were tough, and it was easy for accidents to happen. Bahi took his luggage and continued to move forward. Therefore, Bahi was afraid that he would have to spend the night in this wilderness tonight. But compared to enduring that tomboy, he would rather spend the night in the wilderness. Nangong did not spoil Bahi. She went straight to the car and left. She stepped on the accelerator and drove past Bahi. Bahi was so angry that he almost cursed. The closest airports to the location that Nangong had sent were Hami Airport and Juchuan Airport. Hami Airport was relatively closer, but there were fewer flights there. That was why Qin Sheng and the others were in such a hurry. Fortunately, they arrived at Hami in the evening and then drove to the destination. Nangong kept in touch with them at all times and, at the same time, told them the latest location. However, even if they drove there to find Nangong, it would still take 5 to 6 hours. Nangong continued to drive to the north. Xinjiang was in the west, Inner Mongolia was in the east, and Mongolia was in the north. Although the scope was very large, it was sparsely populated here. It was really difficult to find Mr. Ding, who hid his identity. Therefore, the specific coordinates were very important. After the sky turned dark, Nangong drove for another half an hour. After calming down, he finally could not bear to see Bahi here. After all, he had been following them for so long. Even if he did not make any contributions, he still had to work hard. Moreover, he would not be able to explain himself when the time came. The most important thing was that Nangong was already used to Bahi's existence. Suddenly, there was no one to talk to, so he was not used to it. Bahi kept walking forward because he found that the nearest town on the map was in the north, so he could only go along this road. But when he suddenly received a call from his uncle, he stopped moving forward and sat on the ground to wait for Nangong. If Nangong did not come to find him in 2 hours, he would not hesitate to go back to Inner Mongolia and never contact him again. Fortunately, just when there was only half an hour left before his 2-hour deadline, an off-road vehicle with headlights rushed from the north to the south. He could not open his eyes. His intuition told him that it must be Nangong, and sure enough, he was right. "Get in." Nangong stopped the car next to Bahi and snorted. Bahi was no longer angry, but he deliberately said, "What's wrong, beauty? Can't bear to leave me? Is it because I'm not with you? A little lonely and afraid? You should have said so earlier." Nangong was a little worried when she did not see him, but when she saw him, she felt a little regretful. She said angrily, "I will give you 5 seconds. If you don't get in the car or say another word, I will directly knock you out and throw you into the ravine to fend for yourself." Bahi knew that this woman was really capable, so he quickly got in the car. After getting in the car, Nangong turned around and continued to go north. She did not talk nonsense with Bahi. At this time, Bahi sneered, "After you left, I received a call from my uncle, and then I waited for you by the roadside. I gave you a deadline of 2 hours. If you did not come to find me, I will bring this news directly back to Inner Mongolia. At that time, you will return with nothing. Fortunately, you did not miss it." When Nangong heard this, she was too lazy to pay attention to his nonsense. She only focused on the main point and said in surprise, "Is there any news about Mr. Ding?" Bai deliberately kept her in suspense. "You say sorry to me, or call me Brother Bahi, and I will tell you what news." "Oh," Nangong said playfully. Then Nangong stopped the car. First, she took off the hairband, and her black hair spread out in an instant. At the same time, there was the fragrance of shampoo. Then, she leaned towards Bahi. Her eyes were charming and seductive. She bit her lips and teased, "Do you want me?" The scene in front of him made Bahi a little overwhelmed. What did this woman want to do? Was she going to marry him for the news? Bahi swallowed his saliva subconsciously. Other than her bad temper, this woman's appearance and figure were really good. He was also a normal man. How could he not have feelings for her? Bahi subconsciously wanted to hug Nangong's waist. He did not mind having a war between men and women here. Wasn't it more interesting? Just when his hand was about to reach Nangong's waist, a military dagger was directly pressed against Bahi's throat. Nangong's eyes instantly turned cold. Are you going to say it or not? Bahi's lower body was already propped up. This sudden change scared his little brother so much that it went limp and he broke out in a cold sweat. Sure enough, there must be something wrong when something abnormal happened. I'll say it, Bahi said quickly. This crazy woman really dared to say anything. That phone call was from Ahmed. She told Bahi the specific location. This was something that he thought for a long time before he figured it out. After all, it had been a long time. So, Bahi and Nangong continued to hurry towards the last place that was not far away. They should find Mr. Ding tomorrow morning, unless Ding Xian was also not there. After Nangong and Bahi left, a kilometer away, a certain 2 cars also continued to go north. In one of the cars, a man with a stubble was staring at the image on the drone. He smiled faintly and said, "I told you, that woman will not abandon this man." Chapter 575. Chapter 576 of the Diata Bolt from the Blue. It could be said that from the moment Nangong appeared in Hua Hout, these 2 cars had already started to follow her. In the past half a month, they had followed Nangong for thousands of kilometers. It could be said that they had spared no effort. They were the masterminds behind the storm in the no man's land. At that time, they wanted to get rid of Nangong and Ba He by borrowing someone else's hand. This kind of killing with a borrowed knife could be said to leave no traces and would not expose them. As for who was behind them, only they knew. Unfortunately, that group of desperados only cared about money and not people. They only asked for 2 million and let Nangong and Bahi go. At the same time, they also earned their 500,000 deposit. This made them extremely angry. If it were not for the fact that their mission was to kill Nangong and Bahi, they would definitely make that group of people pay the price. In the end, they could only continue to follow them. Fortunately, there was a new mission. There were a total of 8 people in the 2 cars. They were all extraordinary martial artists. Otherwise, they would not have chased them for thousands of miles. They first went to Inner Mongolia from Beijing, then followed Nangong to Inner Mongolia and Gansu for half a month. Now, they were about to lose their patience. Brother Yi, we have been following them for half a month. When will it end? We are a little impatient. The man sitting in the passenger seat turned to look at the man who spoke just now. He was the person in charge of this mission, and they had to listen to him. From the clothes and equipment of these people, they seemed to be backpackers on a road trip. It was also to avoid people's eyes and ears to avoid any accidents on the road. However, their real identity was shocking. The man called Brother Yi snorted coldly. Impatient? Why does the boss spend money on you trash? Even if you follow them for a year, you'll continue to follow them. The man in the passenger seat said respectfully, Brother Yi, we did not mean this. Didn't we originally plan to kill them in the no man's land? Why did we suddenly decide not to kill them and follow them for a few days? Look at these places, they're all wilderness. We can completely get rid of them without anyone knowing. Why do we need to go through so much trouble? Brother Yi was more or less tired. He thought that if the man and woman rushed through the night, they would not be able to rest tonight. To be honest, he was also a little annoyed. After following them for a whole day, how could he not be annoyed? These are all the boss's orders. Do we need you to teach us how to do it? Brother Yi snorted coldly. The man in the front passenger seat was quite thick-skinned. He said casually, Brother Yi, tell me, what is the boss's purpose? The man in the passenger seat was Brother Ye's confidant, or in other words, everyone in the car was his men. They were not familiar with them, but they all followed their orders. Brother Yi hesitated for a moment before explaining. In the beginning, the boss wanted us to figure out the purpose of these people. Later, he wanted us to find a chance to get rid of the woman. As for the man, it didn't matter. Later, the boss changed his mind and said to let them find the man. If they found him, they would get rid of him together. If they couldn't find him, as long as they planned to return to Beijing, we would get rid of them halfway. Brother Yi originally didn't want to tell them anything, but in order to stabilize the morale of the troops, they wouldn't go all out when the time came. The people in the car nodded. They finally knew what was going on. The man in the passenger seat echoed, I see. But who are they looking for? The people in the car nodded. They finally knew what was going on. The man in the passenger seat echoed, Understood. But who are they looking for? Brother Yi squinted and said, A man who used to be powerful in Sijio City for many years, but now he has been forgotten. This was also one of the reasons why the boss wanted to kill the man. Once he came back, many things would be full of variables. The best choice was to make him disappear. I see. The man in the passenger seat seemed to understand. He did not need to know so much. He only needed to know what he wanted to do. In the end, Brother Yi said, As long as this mission is completed, the boss will not treat anyone badly. Each of you can get at least 1 or 2 million. Hearing this, everyone was instantly energized. They almost said, Brother Yi, why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so, we would have no complaints even if we had to follow you for a year. The 2 cars kept a distance of 1 kilometer from Nangongbok's car. At the same time, they used high-tech means to track them, such as GPS positioning and drone monitoring. They could not fail this mission, and they could not expose their identities. Nangong and Bok continued on their way. Qin Sheng, Lao Chong, and Hao Lei came to help overnight. Of course, Brother Yi and the rest did not know about this. But even if they knew, they would not be worried. They would get rid of them and give the boss a big gift. There were some mountain roads here. It was too dangerous to travel at night. Moreover, they already knew where they were and it was not far away. So Nangong and Bok prepared to rest in the nearest town and wait until dawn. This town was naturally more prosperous than the towns in the no man's land. There was a national highway from east to west. The town had everything. They found a hotel, and the environment was much better than the last time. The most important thing was that they could take a bath. After taking a bath, Nangong changed into clean and refreshing clothes. She wore a white t-shirt and white jeans. Paired with a pair of white shoes, she looked so pure that it was scary. If she walked in this town, she would quickly become the focus of the whole town. Hence, when Bahi saw Nangong again, he was stunned on the spot. He was dumbfounded, and for a long time, he didn't say a word. This was the first time he saw Nangong like this. It turned out that she was so beautiful, much more beautiful than what he had imagined. Her long hair fluttered in the wind like a fairy. It was just that Nangong today, if she looked like she was in Beijing with some light makeup, Bok would probably kneel under her skirt. If you look at me again, believe it or not, I will dig your eyes out. Bok's gaze made Nangong slightly unhappy. She hated it when men looked at her like this. It exposed their desires. Bok laughed and said, Okay, I won't look anymore. Find a restaurant to eat, and then go to the supermarket to buy some supplies. We'll set off again at dawn. We can reach there in about 2 to 3 hours. Nangong casually ordered. Bok was still smiling and said, I will listen to you. Maybe because Nangong was really too beautiful today, Bok rarely quarreled with her. He listened to everything Nangong said. Sometimes when Nangong was not paying attention, he would secretly stare at her. If there were other men who looked too presumptuous, Bok would directly stare at them. He was completely a flower protector. Nangong saw all these and was already used to it. Brother Yi and the others also stayed in the town, but they were separated from Nangong. One was in the east of the town, and the other was in the west of the town. They would never expose their whereabouts. This night it was peaceful. At dawn, Nangong and Bok, who seemed to be in good spirits, finally had a good sleep. After eating breakfast, they continued their journey. Last night, Nangong called her foster father and Qin Sheng. First, she told Qin Sheng that she had confirmed Mr. Ding's location. This was the last possibility. If she still could not find Mr. Ding, she could only go back to Beijing. Qin Chang'an did not say anything about this. Everything was up to fate. He felt that if old Ding wanted to come back to help him and the Qin family get through this difficult time, he would naturally come back. If he did not want to, no matter how much they forced him with his character and temper, he would not come back. Therefore, Qin Chang'an also told Nangong that if she could not see him or if she did not want to come back after seeing him, then she could come back. As for Qin Sheng, Nangong's words were very simple and direct. She told him that she had confirmed Mr. Ding's location and told her foster father's decision. At the same time, she sent Qin Sheng the final location. Not knowing whether it was because she was in a good mood or something else, the scenery that she had been tired of recently was exceptionally beautiful today. Nangong looked out of the window all the way, and Bok, who was driving, secretly looked at her. 2.5 hours later, they finally arrived at the foot of a beautiful mountain. The scenery here was so beautiful that Bok and Nangong could not help but look at it for a long time. On the mountain, there was still snow that had not melted. The mountainside and the foot of the mountain were already covered with trees. At the foot of the mountain, there was a fertile plain, surrounded by a river from east to west. Someone had built a courtyard there. At this moment, there was smoke rising from the chimney. There were 3 dogs tied at the door, barking wildly at Nangong and Bok, who were not far away. Next to it was a horse farm, where 4 to 5 horses were kept. There were also some chickens and goats at the side. It was really a paradise. What a good place, Bok muttered to himself. Nangong said subconsciously, Mr. Ding must be here. After coming back to their senses, the two did not waste any more time and walked quickly to the courtyard. After being busy for more than half a month, they were finally going to find Mr. Ding. The closer Nangong and Bok got, the louder the dogs barked, as if they did not like these 2 uninvited guests. When they were about to push the door open and enter, a middle-aged man dressed in coarse linen clothes walked out of the house. The man wore antique glasses and looked at them with a meaningful look. The man was not Mr. Ding. Mr. Ding was about the same age as Qin Chang'an. Moreover, Nan Gong and Bok knew each other, so Bok took the initiative to call out, "Hello, we are here to look for Mr. Ding. He knows us." The man dressed in coarse linen clothes, antique glasses, and long hair walked over slowly. His eyes were no longer so playful. On the contrary, there was a smile on his face. When he walked in front of Nan Gong and Bok, he said directly, "Nan Gong, Bok." Nan Gong was surprised. "You know us?" "Yes, Mr. Ding told me," the man said truthfully. Then he opened the courtyard door and gestured for them to come in and talk. Nan Gong asked eagerly, "Is Mr. Ding inside?" Bok was also looking forward to it. After all, they had been looking for him for half a month and were really exhausted. The man said slowly, "Sorry, Mr. Ding left a week ago." Chapter 576. Your friend? In half a month, he went from Beijing to Inner Mongolia, and then to Gansu. From Gansu, he traveled thousands of miles from east to west, and finally went north to the junction of 3 provinces. Along the way, he had experienced so many setbacks and tribulations. When the hope was right in front of him, he suddenly told him that Mr. Ding had left a week ago. Even if Nan Gong and Bok were good-tempered, they were about to explode at this time. Bok couldn't help but swear, F***CK. After that, he sat on the ground, as if the last motivation to support him was gone. He couldn't accept this result. Even if he couldn't find Mr. Ding, it had little to do with him. Bok was still a little disappointed. After all, the purpose of this trip was to find Mr. Ding. Nan Gong didn't say a word. He smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. It seemed that he could only go home. Bok asked angrily, "Do you know where Mr. Ding went? We're looking for him urgently." The man adjusted his glasses and shook his head. "Mr. Ding didn't say where he went. He just asked me to tell you that you don't need to look for him anymore. The favor he owed the Qin family has already been repaid." This sentence made Nan Gong frown slightly. Nan Gong asked, "You mean Mr. Ding knows that we are looking for him?" The man didn't deny it. He smiled and nodded at Nan Gong. He hadn't seen such a beautiful woman for a long time. But from his expression and demeanor, he seemed to be very calm. He thought for a moment and said, "Maybe it is because you are looking for him that Mr. Ding left. So you should understand what I want to say." If this was the case, Nan Gong was relieved. After all, before he set off, his foster father had told him that even if he found Mr. Ding, he might not go back to Beijing. Now it seemed that Mr. Ding really didn't want to go back. Bok was a little unconvinced. Why doesn't Mr. Ding want to see us? Even if he doesn't want to go to Beijing, he doesn't need to avoid us. The man touched the head of the dog guarding the door and said, "I don't know. Mr. Ding didn't tell me." Bok continued to ask, "Can you contact Mr. Ding?" When Mr. Ding left, he said that we don't need to look for him. He left and didn't know when he would return. The man replied without raising his head. It seemed that in his eyes, the dogs at the door were more interesting than the 2 strangers. Nan Gong understood. She let out a long sigh and said, "It seems that Mr. Ding doesn't want to see us or go back to Beijing. We can only go back. Let's go." Nan Gong was very disappointed and turned to leave. Bok also quickly got up from the ground. No matter what, this journey was finally coming to an end, although the ending was not satisfactory. What he had to consider now was whether he should continue to follow Nan Gong to Beijing or choose to return to Mengshi. If he chose to return to Mengshi, he was afraid that he would be beaten by his uncle. If he chose to go to Beijing, he was afraid that he would be unfamiliar with the place. Just as Nan Gong and Bok were about to leave, the man raised his head and said very seriously, "Mr. Ding also said that he already knew about what happened in Beijing, but this time it is not something he can solve." Hearing this, Nan Gong subconsciously froze, which meant that Mr. Ding knew everything that happened in Beijing. Nan Gong couldn't wait to ask, "What else did Mr. Ding say?" The man got up slowly, patted the dust on his body, and said, "As for the rest, Mr. Ding told me that I can only tell Master Qi in person." Nan Gong did not expect that Mr. Ding still had other arrangements, so she decided without hesitation, "Well, let's go back to Beijing now." Everyone could understand Nan Gong's mood. After all, for this matter, She had been struggling for half a month. Now, although she had not found Mr. Ding had a message for her foster father, which was also a kind of comfort for her, so she could not wait. The man did not know whether to laugh or cry, and said, "We are not in a hurry. I know that you may arrive today, so I prepared lunch. It is not too late for us to leave after eating." After hearing this, Bach was very surprised. He did not expect that this man actually knew that they would arrive today. Could it be that he could predict? Or was he fooling them? So Bach was skeptical. However, when he heard that lunch was prepared, Bach was still very excited. During this period of time, they were full and hungry, and now they were hungry again. Nangong had seen a lot of super mundane masters, so she did not have any doubts about this. Some people did have this kind of ability, such as Mr. Ding. This man seemed to have a special relationship with Mr. Ding, so it could be explained that he knew these things. The two of them followed the man into the courtyard, and as soon as they entered the house, they could smell the fragrance of meat. Bai's stomach started to rumble, and Nangong glared at him. "That's all you've got?" About a kilometer away from this paradise, the car that had been following Nangong and Bach had stopped at the foot of another mountain. At the same time, they had already used drones to investigate the situation in front of them, and were now discussing countermeasures. The man in the passenger seat stared at the picture on the screen and asked, "Brother Yi, what should we do? Is it the person they are looking for?" Brother Yi said expressionlessly, "It looks a little like it, but I am still not sure. But from the looks of this place, it should be similar, very suitable for living in seclusion." "Then what should we do? Should we do something? If not, we may be exposed." The man in the passenger seat frowned and said, although he wanted to complete this task in a hurry, he did not want to fail. Brother Yi thought for a moment and said, "Let me call the boss and see what he thinks." After all, this was not a small matter. One should know that the man was not light, and this woman was Qin Chang'an's adopted daughter. Once something went wrong, the counterattack from the other party would not be simple. Brother Yi took the phone and walked into the woods. As for what they were talking about, naturally, he could not let others know. Even if this task failed, he must not expose his identity. Not long after, Brother Yi came back and gathered everyone together. He said in a loud voice, "Do it." Everyone immediately took their weapons without hesitation and went along the ridge to the small courtyard over there. As for what to pay attention to, Brother Yi had already reminded them many times before they set off. In an SUV some distance away from the small courtyard, Hao Lei, who was driving, asked casually, "Lao Qin, how long until we arrive?" Qin Sheng said casually, "About half an hour." At least for now, there was no movement from Nangong's side, which meant that there should not be any danger before they arrived. As long as they met up, even if they encountered danger, they would absolutely not have to worry about the situation. After all, this lineup was very strong. What Qin Sheng was more concerned about was whether he could find Mr. Ding. It was said that Mr. Ding was the #1 military advisor of the old man in the past, and also the disciple personally taught by his grandfather. Qin Sheng really wanted to meet him. In the small courtyard, Nangong and Ba were eating. Nangong ate casually and then stopped. This was a habit that had been developed for so many years. If she was in Beijing, she would strictly control the amount of calories she consumed every day. She would definitely not be like some women who would eat and drink after losing weight for a period of time. Bahi could not care so much. He just wanted to fill his stomach. During this period of time, he had been too miserable. He could only fill his stomach when he passed by the county or small town. Moreover, the food that this man cooked today was really delicious, especially this hand-grab lamb. He had never eaten such delicious food before. Both sides had already introduced each other. The man who was drinking tea in front of him was called Zhong Shan, a Jiangsu native. He had been hanging around in Beijing for many years and finally met Mr. Ding. They were both teachers and friends. These years, he followed Mr. Ding everywhere and also learned a lot from Mr. Ding. Therefore, when Mr. Ding left, he entrusted everything to him. "Lao Zhong, your cooking skills are not bad. Who did you learn it from?" Bahi, who was gnawing on a big leg of lamb, asked without raising his head. His table manners were really too ugly, as if someone would snatch it for him. Zhong Shan, who looked very calm, chuckled and said, I learned it from the herdsmen and mountain people. These years, I did not learn anything except cooking. Fortunately, Mr. Ding's taste is not picky. Otherwise, he would have chased me away long ago. Bai flattered and said, "How is it possible? It is so delicious. Mr. Ding must be secretly happy. Speaking of which, do you have any secret recipe for this hand-grab lamb? Why have I never eaten such delicious food before?" Of course, there is a secret recipe. I learned it from a herdsman. If you want, I will tell you later, Zhongshan said happily. To be recognized by others, this was a kind of happiness. Nangong looked like he did not want to talk to strangers, and Bahi was indeed friendly. These two people were quite interesting. Zhongshan looked at them with interest. Nangong said unhappily, "Hurry up and eat your food. We can go after you are full." This sentence had a double meaning, and Bahi did not think much about it. He smiled and continued to gnaw on his leg of lamb. He was just short of asking if he could take some away. At this time, Nangong looked at Zhongshan and said, "After you leave, what will happen here? Don't worry, I have already told them. Someone will come and take care of it. Besides, I will be back after a period of time," Zhongshan explained with a smile. He definitely would not expect that when he came back, it would be many years later. Bahi was full, and Nangong continued to drink tea. This man's tea was quite delicious, but the taste of the tea was a little strange, and Nangong had never drunk it before. Zhongshan packed his things in the house, and there was nothing to bring, just a carry-on backpack, which contained some personal things. Just when Zhongshan was almost ready, suddenly there was a continuous barking outside. Zhongshan frowned and was ready to go out to see what was going on. Nangong thought that they had arrived and said with a little excitement, "My friends are here." Zhongshan took the lead to go out and found a few strange men standing in the yard. They did not look very good. He looked back at Nangong and said, "Your friends?" Nangong had already seen these people in the yard and subconsciously shook his head and said, "No, if they are not friends, then they are enemies." Zhongshan could understand from Nangong's expression, but he did not seem to be nervous. Chapter 577. With just you guys? The biggest crisis of this trip was the thrilling night in the no man's land. Nangong and Bahi still had lingering fears. Fortunately, those people only cared about money and not people, otherwise they would not be able to leave so easily that night. It was just that the mastermind who paid for their lives that night did not show up. Although there were many hardships along the way, the group of people seemed to have disappeared. Nangong and Bahi did not believe that they would give up just like that. They thought of many ways to search, but still did not find any clues. It had to be said that Brother Ye's anti-reconnaissance ability was very strong. After all, they were all professionals. If they were so easily discovered, then they were too weak. Nangong could not help but think, did they give up? It was not possible. Now, the mastermind behind that night gave Nangong and Bahi an answer. That was, "We have always been here. Thank you for your concern." Zhongshan, who had already understood that these were not friends but enemies. Although he looked calm and indifferent, his heart was already calculating what to do next. It seemed that these people would not sit down and reason with them. Then, they seemed to have the advantage in numbers. It seemed that the only option left for them was to escape. Bahi was dumbfounded at this moment. He was originally full and really wanted to have a good sleep on the way back. This life was too comfortable. Hearing that Nangong's friends had come, Bahi ran out to greet them, but happened to hear the conversation between Nangong and Zhongshan. He instantly woke up. These people might be the group of people who wanted to kill them that night. Now, they finally came out. Bahi trembled and said, "What should we do?" Nangong was too lazy to care about this coward. She took a few steps forward and at the same time looked around. Only then did she realize that in addition to the few people in the courtyard, there were a few more men coming out from the back of the courtyard. It seemed that the other party came prepared. "Who are you?" that person asked in a deep voice. These people were naturally Brother Yi, who had followed them for half a month. Now that this journey had finally ended, everyone was very enthusiastic. They were waiting to finish this mission and return to Beijing or go out to hide for a few days. Can't you guess it? Brother Yi deliberately laughed. He did not give a prepared answer, but still said the answer. He did not want this group of people to guess anything. Nangong squinted and said, "If I didn't guess wrong, you're the people who wanted to buy our lives in the no man's land." Brother Yi laughed and said, "Smart. It's a pity that you guys were lucky enough to escape in the no man's land. Those idiots only care about money and not people. Now, we can only do it ourselves," Brother Yi said. He did not intend to be long-winded. There would be too many variables if he delayed for too long. Judging from the accent of the man in front of him, he seemed to be from Beijing. Nangong guessed that he was probably the enemy of the Qin family, since they could chase him all the way from Beijing and spend half a month to travel thousands of miles. They couldn't be a group of embroidered pillows. Therefore, they were in a very bad situation. Nangong gritted his teeth and said, "Is there no room for negotiation?" Brother Yi was a little surprised. He didn't expect that such a beautiful woman could still be so calm at this time and ask such an unexpected question. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No, someone wants your life. We're just following orders." "Okay, I got it." Nangong nodded slightly. The man in the front passenger seat said angrily, "Brother Yi, why are you wasting time with them? Just kill them." When Brother Yi heard the man call out his name, he was so angry that he slapped him. He had already said not to expose his identity. If something went wrong, no one would be able to bear the consequences. The man in the front passenger seat seemed to understand and quickly apologized for mercy. Nangong also happened to hear this call of Brother Yi. She silently remembered it in her heart. She slowly took 2 steps back. Just when Brother Yi and the others were curious about what she was going to do, Nangong suddenly shouted to Ba He and Zhongshan, "Run!" This shout directly stunned everyone present. They thought that she was going to do something, but it turned out that she was going to run away. How could they let these people leave so easily? Zhongshan was very clear about what Nangong wanted to do. Based on this woman's character, it was nothing more than a little delay to let them think of an escape route. Therefore, after hearing Nangong's shout, Zhongshan did not hesitate to pull Ba He towards a river. There were a few horses eating grass there. As long as they ran over, they would be able to escape immediately. But the problem was, how could they get over? Although the horses in the stable were the closest, it was more difficult than the horses by the river. Brother Yi saw that Zhongshan and Ba He had already run towards the river and immediately shouted, "Stop them!" The few people at the back of the courtyard immediately rushed over. At this time, Nangong also went up to meet them. She did not intend to escape, but wanted to create an opportunity for Zhongshan and Ba He. After all, she was the one with the highest combat ability here. Otherwise, facing these people, no one would be able to escape. The situation was critical. It was a matter of life and death. They could only hope that the reinforcements would arrive as soon as possible. Otherwise, Nangong would definitely die. Stop them. Brother Yi saw that the 2 men were about to run and immediately ordered the few men who were closest to them. The few men immediately rushed over. How could Nangong let them stop Ba He and Zhongshan? She did not hesitate to meet them. At the same time, Brother Yi and the others also rushed over. Nangong's speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, she had rushed in front of the 3 men. She turned around and kicked the man at the front. Fortunately, the man stopped in time and escaped the attack. The tall and strong man next to him was furious. He threw a punch at Nangong. Nangong dodged it and dodged it. She punched the man's ribs twice, but the man only frowned slightly. It could be seen that his skin was thick and his ability to withstand blows was very strong. The man at the side had already crossed Nangong's side. Nangong felt that something was wrong and immediately gave up on the strong man and turned to chase after the man. 1 against 3, Nangong was not afraid at all. It was not like she had never been in such a situation before. She had killed her way out of the encirclement many times. But when Nangong wanted to chase after the man, the strong man grabbed Nangong's shoulder and pulled him back. At the same time, he kneed Nangong. This man's strength was very strong. If he hit Nangong, Nangong would probably suffer. So Nangong could only give up the chase. She turned around and used both hands to press the man's knee. At the same time, she exerted strength in her legs. With a beautiful somersault in the air, Nangong dodged the strong man's knee. At the same time, she kicked the strong man's neck. The The strong man was stunned by this kick. His huge body staggered a few steps back. His whole body was in a daze. Nangong took the opportunity to kick the strong man's chest. The strong man's strong body fell heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. It could be seen the difference in strength between the two sides. However, Nangong's situation was not that good. She had just landed on the ground when Brother Yi, who had already rushed over, kicked Nangong's back. Nangong flew out and fell hard on the ground. She had been ambushed. Nangong, who was a little embarrassed, slowly got up. She stared at Brother Yi and the others. Facing so many people, and all of them were martial artists, it was already very good for Nangong to be able to protect herself. It was obviously too difficult for her to protect Ba, He, and Zhongshan. Therefore, Nangong had already tried her best. She could not care less about the few men who were chasing Ba, He, and Zhongshan. Brother Yi didn't want to make things difficult for Nangong. Of course, he knew how powerful this woman was. However, they came prepared this time. The 8 of them against 3 people, including Nangong, had an overwhelming advantage. It was impossible for Nangong to protect the other 2 people while fighting against 8 people at once. Brother Yi stood in front of Nangong and sneered, "Nangong, surrender. I don't want to make things difficult for you. You're not our opponent." Nangong gritted her teeth and snorted, "Just based on you guys, just based on us? Do you think you have a chance of winning? I'm afraid you won't even know how you die in the end." Brother Yi laughed. If he let Nangong escape from his hands today, he would write his name backwards. "Hee," Nangong said disdainfully. Brother Yi was too lazy to talk nonsense and said angrily, "Go." The few men who were still beside Brother Yi immediately rushed towards Nangong. Their eyes were incomparably excited. It was like a pack of wolves had met a lonely little sheep. Nangong had already thought of a countermeasure. Before Brother Ye's voice fell, Nangong turned around and ran straight in the direction of Ba He and Zhongshan. On the other side, after Ba He and Zhongshan ran for a while, they looked back and saw that Nangong was already in a fierce battle. Asking a woman to protect the 2 of them, a hot-blooded man like Ba, he could not do it. He would rather die standing than live kneeling. What's more, Ba He had witnessed how his uncle, a nobody, became the emperor of Mengshi step by step. That was fought with his life, and he would not back down at any time. So Ba He said to Zhongshan, "You run, I'll cover you." Zhongshan had followed Mr. Ding for many years, and he was a very rational man. He would never hesitate and be overcautious. He was very clear that he would only be a burden if he stayed behind. Only after he left safely with Nangong and Ba, he'd be able to do whatever they wanted. So Zhongshan did not hesitate and rushed towards the few horses by the river. At this time, the 2 men behind also caught up. Ba He greeted them with the momentum of a tiger coming down the mountain. It seemed that he wanted to fight 1 against 2, but in the end, he was directly knocked over by the 2 men. Ba He fell heavily on the ground. His body was covered with mud, and even his face had a lot of weeds. He looked really embarrassed. However, Ba He did not stop. When a man in front wanted to chase after Zhongshan, Ba He directly hugged his waist and did not let him continue to chase. The man behind kicked Ba He in the back. Ba He still did not let go. Even if they killed him, he would not let them leave. Fortunately, at this time, Nangong had already rushed over. He kicked the man next to Ba He and, at the same time, pulled Ba He, who had fallen on the ground, up and said, "Run." Ba He looked back and saw that everyone had caught up with him. That angry look on their faces showed that they wanted to tear them apart. So, without hesitation, he followed Nangong and ran out. Chapter 578. Leather. Real leather, of course. Qin Sheng and the others did not know what happened in the courtyard. If they knew, they would definitely speed up. They did not see the scenery along the way clearly last night. After dawn, they were amazed by the scenery along the way. The scenery in the northwest was so beautiful. After all, both Qin Sheng and Changbaji had been to the northwest. Back then, Qin Sheng had been fleeing and training all the way here. During this period, he had experienced many things and met many friends. It was just that Qin Sheng was unwilling to talk about that past. Up until now, it had been a gap in Qin Sheng's history. Chang Baji had been to the north and south of the motherland these years. He had been to Heilongjiang in the north, Hainan in the south, Chongming Dongji Island in the east, Xinjiang and Tibet in the west, so he was used to these scenery. At this time, Chang Baji was driving. Sitting in the passenger seat, Hao Lei stared out of the window and said, "The scenery here is really good. If there is a chance, I want to go on a road trip in the northwest." Qin Sheng laughed and said, "If you want, you can stay here. I will go back with Lao Chang first. See you when you have had enough fun. I'm just saying, let's get down to business." Hao Lei shook his head and laughed. He also wanted to find time to go to Shanghai. He had not seen Han Bing for some time and missed her. Hao Lei buried this feeling in his heart because he knew that Han Bing liked Qin Sheng. Even if he confessed to Han Bing, she would not agree. After all, when Han Bing was at her most helpless, only Qin Sheng stood up for her. No matter how strong a woman's heart was, she would be touched. Besides, how would he get along with Qin Sheng in the future? Therefore, Qin Sheng was in a dilemma, and Hao Lei was also helpless. Chang Baji, who was driving very seriously, suddenly found two off-road vehicles with a license plates parked on the side of the road. He was somewhat surprised and subconsciously looked at Qin Sheng. After all, since entering this mountain road, they had not met other cars. Maybe they are from other places. At first, Qin Sheng did not care. After all, the scenery here was so beautiful, it was very likely that tourists from other places came here for a road trip. Besides, they also saw a lot of vehicles with foreign license plates. Chang Baji did not think too much about it. When their car passed by the two SUVs, Chang Baji looked inside subconsciously, only to find that there was no one inside. That was strange. This place was not a big city. It was in the wilderness. Even if they wanted to do something, there would be someone guarding the car. Qin Sheng frowned and made a decision. "Lao Chang, stop the car." Chang Baji immediately stopped the car when he heard that. Although he did not know what was going on, Qin Sheng and Hao Lei got out of the car unhurriedly and walked toward the two off-road vehicles. Indeed, there was no one in the car. Hao Lei shouted a few more times, but there was still no response. Looking inside the car window, there were all kinds of supplies and equipment. There were even drones. After that, he looked at Chang Baji and asked, "Lao Chang, how far are we from the place we are going to?" Chang Baji took out his phone, which had been on the GPS, and replied, "1 more kilometer." Qin Sheng's intuition told him that something was wrong. There was no one in the two off-road vehicles with Inner Mongolia license plates. Moreover, they were so close to Nangong and the others. Then, he thought of the danger that Nangong had mentioned before. Qin Sheng immediately called Nangong without hesitation. But after calling several times, no one answered the phone. This time, Qin Sheng panicked a little. He shouted to Chang Baji and Hao Lei, "Oh no, something might have happened over there." Chang Baji and Hao Lei's faces changed instantly. The three of them immediately rushed into the car and stepped on the accelerator. They hoped that nothing would happen over there. If something happened, they also hoped that they could arrive in time. At the riverside outside the small courtyard, Zhongshan ran in the front. He had already called a horse over. These are all horses that he had raised for several years. They were incomparably familiar and intimate. He whistled and several horses ran over. Although these horses were not saddled, Zhongshan had been dealing with horses for a few years. He was already very familiar with them. With a set of skillful movements, he directly rode on the date red horse. As long as he got on the horse, it was impossible for those people to catch up with him. However, Zhongshan could get on the horse, but it was difficult for Nangong and Bahi. Moreover, those people who were chasing after them would not give them any chance at all. Seeing that Zhongshan had already gotten on the horse, Nangong's heart was more or less relaxed. He shouted, "Don't worry about us, Run." Zhongshan looked back a few times and was somewhat reluctant. Although they had not known each other for a long time, his conscience was somewhat uneasy. However, in the end, he still rode along the river and went downstream. He remembered that a few kilometers downstream, there were many herdsmen who had a good relationship with him and Mr. Ding. He could ask them to come over and help. If he stayed, not only would he not be of any help, he would also be a burden to them. After Zhongshan ran away, only Nangong and Bahi were left. After all, Brother Yi and the rest were not vegetarians. At this moment, they had already surrounded them. Nangong made a prompt decision. Enter the mountain, run separately. Then the two of them changed their direction and ran wildly towards the forest not far away. 3 people, 3 directions. Brother Yi did not expect the situation to turn out like this. He was really too careless. However, the man who left was not Mr. Ding, so it was not important. Otherwise, their manpower would be divided. So Brother Yi immediately decided, ignore the horse rider, chase these 2. 8 people split up. 4 of them went after Nangong, while the other 4 went after Ba He. Among them, Brother Yi was mainly in charge of Nangong. His goal was to kill Nangong. Although Nangong and Ba He had separated, Nangong was very clear that if she did not buy more time for Ba He to escape, it would be difficult for him to leave safely with his ability. Therefore, Nangong turned around and directly rushed towards the 4 people who were chasing Ba He. He directly kicked the man who was lagging behind. Brother Yi was not a vegetarian. Otherwise, how could he chase for so long? He immediately made a gesture, and the 2 men who were chasing Ba He turned around and surrounded Nangong. The other 2 men took the opportunity to chase Ba He while he and the other man blocked Nangong's escape route. In just a blink of an eye, Nangong was already surrounded. This time, there was no longer a chance to escape. Otherwise, Brother Yi and the rest were really useless. They had followed her for half a month in vain. Run! Why aren't you running anymore? Brother Yi stared at Nangong angrily. The originally perfect hunting plan was now messed up by this woman. One of the men even ran away. This made him very unhappy. At the same time, this also showed their problems. Firstly, they did not predict the opponent's true strength. Secondly, they were too careless and did not take it seriously. Nangong looked at Ba He, who had already entered the mountain but was still being chased. Her heart was calm. She had already done what she could. As for whether Ba He could escape or not, it would depend on his own luck. Anyway, she did not owe Ba He anything. After all, it was his uncle Aman who asked him to bring her to look for Mr. Ding. The reward was to bring Ba He to Beijing to work for the Qin family. Hence, they did not owe each other anything. Now, Nangong had to worry about how she could leave alive. A battle to the death. Nangong stared at Brother Yi and the rest and said, so much nonsense. If you want my life, come and take it. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Brother Yi was really angry this time. Although he was very protective of the fairer sex. After all, Qin Chang'an's adopted daughter was really beautiful, especially with her temperament. However, he had never liked this kind of hot-tempered woman. Women should be gentle like water and flirtatious. Therefore, Brother Yi did not talk nonsense anymore and directly rushed up. This time, he wanted to kill Nangong directly. Don't you think you are very powerful? Then I will let you know what is called powerful. Nangong stared at Brother Yi and then pulled out a butterfly knife for self-defense from her waist. This way, she would have a higher chance of winning against the 4 of them. Nangong knelt on one knee and held the knife in her hand. When Brother Yi rushed over, Nangong also rushed up at the same speed. A fierce battle had begun. The moment the 2 sides met, they went straight for Brother Yi's death spot. Nangong's butterfly knife slashed diagonally from the right side of Brother Yi's abdomen. If this knife hit Brother Yi, it would split open his abdomen. If Brother Yi were to be taken down by Nangong right away, that would really be a slap in the face for showing off. Clearly, Brother Yi wasn't that kind of idiot. His 2 hands directly locked onto Nangong's wrist, making it difficult for Nangong's butterfly knife to move an inch. At the same time, Brother Yi lifted his knee and directly hit the side of Nangong's waist. Nangong's hand that was holding the butterfly knife was controlled by Brother Yi, but she was not in a hurry. She loosened her left and right hand suddenly dropped the butterfly knife. Her right hand smoothly caught it and slashed at the base of Brother Yi's thigh. Brother Yi's face changed slightly. Both of his hands pushed back fiercely and followed up with a punch, directly hitting Nangong's shoulder. Nangong's center of gravity was unstable, and she took a few steps back. However, the butterfly knife still cut the side of Brother Yi's thigh, but the wound was not deep. Both sides exchanged blows. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, no one gained the upper hand. You want to kill me with just your strength, Nangong said with a face full of disdain as she gently wiped the blood on the butterfly knife with her arm. Brother Yi did not feel ashamed seeing blood. He knew that this woman was very powerful, but he did not expect that she was even more powerful than he imagined. So Brother Yi laughed and said, I am not here to fight with you one-on-one. This is too much of a waste of time. My mission is to kill you, so no matter what method I use, as long as I kill you, I will win. Nangong's face changed slightly and said, You still talk too much nonsense. Brother Yi cursed in his heart. Later when I step on you under my feet, I will see how arrogant you can be. At that time, I will humiliate you. Go! Brother Yi waved his hand at the 3 men beside him. The 3 men who surrounded Nangong from several other directions attacked almost at the same time. They rushed towards Nangong at the same time, and Brother Yi followed closely behind. If it was 1 against 1, you would be at an advantage. What about 1 against 4? I don't believe that you are that powerful. Nangong's side was not having an easy time. Bahi, who had entered the mountain, was not having an easy time either. It was just that his situation was slightly better than Nangong's. After all, Nangong had given him enough time to escape and took the initiative to plunge into danger. Bahi's only advantage was that he had good endurance and could not run to death. After all, he had been running around in the desert every day and his stamina was really not a problem. However, his speed was not fast and his skills were far inferior. Therefore, he could run continuously, but if he was surrounded and hunted, he would only be left with a dead end. Therefore, not long after Bahi ran, he met a strong man who was flanking him from the side. The strong man scolded angrily. What are you scolding me for? Continue running. I want to see where you can run to. Bahi panted heavily and replied, Brother, we can talk things out. We have no enmity. There is no need to play like this. If you kill me, it will be a crime. Skin, real skin. At this time, Bahi could still be so thick-skinned. One had to say that his mentality was really good. Otherwise, how could he quarrel with Nangong all the way? The strong man did not want to talk to Bahi at all and scolded, So much nonsense. I will kill you first. After saying that, the burly man rushed over. However, Bahi and the burly man started to hide from each other, deliberately circling around a few big trees, causing the burly man to feel dizzy. If it was not for the fact that the people behind him had caught up, Bahi was afraid that he would continue to go around. It was completely a crushing of intelligence. Unfortunately, God did not give him a chance. If he did not run, he would be waiting for death. Therefore, Bahi seized the opportunity and rushed forward. But just when he succeeded, he found that his whole body was inexplicably flying backward. When he came back to his senses, he was directly thrown out by the strong man and fell heavily on the ground. After falling, although Bahi gritted his teeth in pain, he quickly stood up. His ability to resist attacks was not ordinary. No wonder he was beaten up by Nangong. Bahi gritted his teeth. Damn it, I will fight with you. Therefore, Bahi rushed towards the strong man with all his might. The strong man was not afraid of Bahi risking his life, but he was afraid that Bahi would hide. He stood in the same place and stared at Bahi. After Bahi rushed up, he directly hugged the strong man's waist and pushed him back. The strong man did not take Bahi seriously at first, but he did not expect that Bahi's brute force was so strong. He was pushed back a few steps. Bahi was a Mongolian, and he had been wrestling since he was a child. Therefore, in the end, Bahi used a Mongolian wrestling technique and used his strength to knock down the strong man. Originally, it was not a big deal, but the strong man was unlucky. There was a wooden stake as thick as an arm behind him. The strong man's waist directly hit it, and he almost fainted from the pain. Bahi was fine. He climbed up with a cheeky smile and sneered. You want to fight with me? You're still too young. After saying that, Bahi was ready to continue running forward. He would not pretend to be innocent after he got the upper hand. If he did that, he would really be a fool. Bahi had just run a few steps when suddenly a stick came from the front. Before Bahi could react, he had already been hit and his whole body flew out again. This time, Bahi was in so much pain that he could not get up again. It showed how lethal this stick was. The man who had been hiding in front slowly walked out. It was the man who had been sitting in the front passenger seat. He snorted coldly, "Little guy, do you think I can't deal with you?" On the other side, Nangong had already fallen into a deadly battle. On this side, Bahi was basically surrounded. If Qin Sheng's reinforcements did not arrive soon, this day next year would be the death anniversary of Nangong and Bahi. Then what was Qin Sheng doing with Changbaji and Hao Lei? Chapter 579. Nobody can leave. I fell down from a bad cold and only got better. I got up to write. Most of the time, people would say that it was better to be safe than sorry. Often, it was just that if something happened. Hence, some big shots named this phenomenon Murphy's Law. From Hami to here, Qin Sheng and the rest had been safe and sound. However, just as they were about to reach their destination, an accident happened. This really made them feel helpless. After going around the bay, Qin Sheng and the rest could see the battle on the other side of the river from afar. It was just that they could not see the exact situation. However, Qin Sheng could roughly guess the situation. It was obvious that they were outnumbered. Hence, Qin Sheng hurriedly brought Changbaji and Hao Lei over to help. At the riverbank, Nangong was in a terrible situation. She was even more battered and exhausted. She had to fight against 4 people by herself. If it was not for Brother Yi, based on Nangong's strength, the others would not be her match at all. However, because they knew her strength, they sent Brother Yi to lead the team. Once, twice, thrice. Nangong fell once again. There were a few more cuts on her face, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Her clothes were covered in mud. It should be said that in recent years, Nangong had never suffered such a big loss. Of course, Brother Yi and the rest did not gain any advantage. A few of them were cut by Nangong's butterfly knife. Some of them were bleeding profusely and were thinking of ways to bandage their wounds. Brother Yi also suffered 2 cuts from the butterfly knife. However, it was not a big deal. Compared to Nangong, it was much better. Still want to struggle? Brother Yi stared at the prey in front of him and said with a smile. To him, the outcome was already decided. He did not believe that this grasshopper would be able to jump around after autumn. Nangong's heart was like dead ashes. She cursed Qin Sheng countless times in her heart. If you still do not come, I will really die here today. At that time, I will not let you off even if I become a ghost. However, Qin Sheng still did not appear. Nangong could not care less about Bahi or Zhongshan. She could only force herself to stay alive. After all, she did not want to die here. Why do you always have so much nonsense to say? My life is right here. If you have the ability, then come and take it. Nangong sneered. You can kill me, but you definitely won't make me submit. This was Nangong. Brother Yi originally thought that it would be a pity for such a beautiful woman to die like this. He even planned to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. But who knew that the beautiful woman didn't take him seriously at all? Brother Yi could only kill her. Go! Brother Yi shouted again. This was the final charge, and also the Horn of Death. The other 2 followed Brother Yi and rushed forward without hesitation. This time, they were determined to take down Nangong. Nangong gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing like torches, and tightly gripped the butterfly knife in his hand. Even if he were to die, he would drag a few people down with him. He would never walk alone on the road to hell. When the 2 sides clashed, Nangong's butterfly knife directly tore through one man's chest, revealing the ribs inside. The other man's thigh also had a bloody cut. Only Brother Yi didn't suffer much. The price Nangong had to pay was being beaten to the ground. He was completely exhausted and could no longer stand up. The outcome had been decided. Life and death had been decided. Nangong's life was over. Nangong's injury this time was not light. The most important thing was that he had to be a father and a mother. His physical strength was basically exhausted. Moreover, he didn't have a good rest during this period of time. His mental state was originally not good, which was why he was taken advantage of by the other party. The other men were all bandaging their wounds. Brother Yi squatted down and teased, still stubborn. Nangong struggled to get up, but just when he got up, he was directly kicked down by a man next to him. Brother Yi glared at that man and said, "Don't you know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex?" That man smiled mischievously and said, "Brother Yi is right. It's my fault. If you want to kill me, just kill me." Nangong no longer had any illusions. He only hoped that when Qin Sheng arrived, he would know who killed them so that he could take revenge for them. He couldn't let them die in such a dubious way. Brother Yi suddenly said playfully, "You injured a few of my brothers. If I just kill you like this, it would be too easy for you. Brothers, don't you think so?" The other men instantly understood what Brother Yi meant. This was a great beauty in front of them. They had been suppressed for the past half a month. They would probably be in heat if they saw a female donkey. Now, such a beautiful woman was in front of them. If they just killed her like this, it would be a pity. They could let their brothers enjoy her first and then kill her. This would be making the best use of her. The few men who were bandaging their wounds all laughed at the same time. However, that smile was a little wretched. In Nangong's eyes, it was even more creepy. She was not afraid of death, but if she died like this, she would not be able to accept it. Nangong didn't want to be humiliated like this. She struggled to pick up the butterfly knife and wanted to commit suicide. But Brother Yi didn't give her a chance. He directly grabbed her wrist and sneered. "Do you want to die? It's not that easy." At this time, the men who rushed into the forest to catch Ba He had returned. Ba He looked a little miserable. It was obvious that he had been beaten up badly. In addition to that, he was knocked down by the rod just now. At this time, he also lost the ability to fight. Moreover, he did not have any ability to fight. Seeing that Ba He was caught, Nangong closed her eyes helplessly. She had done what she should do. Perhaps this was Ba He's fate. At the same time, Ba He also saw Nangong lying on the ground. He had already expected that Nangong had wasted too much time because of them. If Nangong had escaped alone, it would not have been a difficult task. It was because of them that Nangong had been dragged down. Although it was noisy along the way and he was often beaten up, at this time, Ba He more or less felt guilty. Just in time, both of them had been caught. Our mission is complete. Brother Yi saw Ba He being carried out and was very happy. As for the man who escaped, he was no longer important. The man in the front passenger seat came over and asked, "Brother, what should we do now? Kill him directly, or let's get out of here first?" Brother Yi decided after careful consideration. Moreover, he still wanted to enjoy this beautiful woman who made him suffer a lot. Everyone bandaged their wounds and was ready to leave. Suddenly, there was a sound in the forest. Brother Yi waved his hand to signal for silence. Then he frowned and said, "What's that sound?" Everyone listened subconsciously. Just when they were listening carefully, suddenly 3 horses rushed out of the forest and went straight towards them. It seemed that there were people on the horses. They were close to the forest, and it was only a few steps away. There was no time to react at all. When they came back to their senses, the 3 horses were already in front of them in an instant. Some of them had quick reactions and dodged, while those who had slow reactions were directly hit and sent flying. As for Nangong and Ba He, they had already been thrown to the ground. Fortunately, they had dodged the impact of the 3 horses. Otherwise, they would have been accidentally injured. These people were none other than Qin Sheng, Chang Baji, and Hao Lei. When they were in the forest just now, they happened to meet the few horses that got lost on the riverbank. Qin Sheng and Chang Baji both knew how to ride a horse, so it was not difficult for them. Although Hao Lei had never ridden a horse before, he had only ridden it in the scenic spots. However, it was not difficult for him to travel such a distance. Moreover, Qin Sheng and Chang Baji had taught him the essentials. Qin Sheng, Chang Baji, and Hao Lei could be said to have rushed over nonstop. Fortunately, they met these few lost horses in the forest, so they could catch up at the critical moment. Otherwise, by the time they arrived, Nangong might have already met with a mishap. When the 3 horses rushed into the crowd, Qin Sheng, Hao Lei, and Chang Baji had already jumped down from the horses' backs and directly protected Nangong in the middle. They did not even pay attention to Ba He, who was next to them. Of course, this was because they did not know Ba He. Brother Yi did not expect that at the last moment, suddenly 3 people would suddenly appear and ruin his plan. He stared at Qin Sheng and asked, "Who are you people?" Qin Sheng had already helped Nangong, who was lying on the ground. Looking at Nangong's appearance, Qin Sheng was very distressed. No matter what, she was the old man's adopted daughter and also his nominal sister. Although Nangong had never been nice to him, she had also protected and saved him in the past. Now that she was being bullied by outsiders so badly, it was intolerable. Therefore, Qin Sheng said angrily, "I am your uncle." Nangong had not come back to her senses yet. Looking at the familiar man in front of her, she thought that she was dreaming. She murmured, "Qin Sheng, am I dreaming?" No matter how strong Nangong was, she was still a woman. Every woman would have times of fatigue and softness. At this moment, Nangong was like this. In half a month, they ran thousands of kilometers and went through hardships, but they still could not find Mr. Ding. This had already made Nangong very disappointed. Now, they encountered such a thing again. She tried her best, but still failed to protect Ba He and finally put herself in danger, which made her even more depressed. She really thought that her life was going to end like this. "Sorry, I am late. You're not dreaming," Qin Sheng said, while wiping the fresh blood from the corner of Nangong's mouth. Hearing this sentence, Nangong, who had been very strong, suddenly hugged Qin Sheng and cried, because Qin Sheng had finally arrived. This was the first time Qin Sheng heard Nangong cry, and he felt even more upset. He slowly put Nangong on the ground and said, "Don't cry first. Wait for me to avenge you. Then you can cry." Nangong nodded heavily. Although she was still cursing Qin Sheng in her heart, cursing why Qin Sheng did not come to save her, when she saw Qin Sheng, Nangong was still overwhelmed with emotions. Especially just now, what Brother Yi and the others said made her feel very helpless. She had not experienced those things between men and women. If she was really defiled by these people, it would really be better to die than to live. Fortunately, now, Qin Sheng was here. Brother Yi did not put Qin Sheng and the others in his eyes at all. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers. Hearing Qin Sheng's words, Brother Yi sneered, "You are courting death." Qin Sheng had already stood up, pointed at Nangong on the ground, and said angrily, "These are all done by you?" Brother Yi did not speak. "Nonsense, this was not done by us. Did you do it?" At the same time, Brother Yi spread out and surrounded Qin Sheng and the others, ready to take action at any time. Qin Sheng, Chong Baji, and Hao Lei were not afraid at all. They formed a triangular formation and slowly moved forward. Qin Sheng faced Brother Yi and said, "Today, no one can leave." Chapter 580. Chapter 581. Want to run? My cold is getting better. Try to fight more next week. Brother Yi thought that not only did they have the advantage in numbers, but they also had the absolute advantage in strength. After all, they faced 3 opponents just now. In the end, one of them ran away in embarrassment, and the other 2 were taken down directly. Now, 3 more people came to die. Although some of his men were injured just now, 4 of them are fine. Facing 3 opponents, they still had the upper hand. Most importantly, they still had him to hold the line. However, in front of Qin Sheng, Chong Baji, and Hao Lei, these people in front of them were not even enough to fill the gap between their teeth. They had seen people who were more powerful than them, and they had also seen people who had more people than them. Moreover, Qin Sheng was already very angry now. An angry Qin Sheng was not someone to be trifled with. Qin Sheng had known Nangong for more than half a year, but he had never seen Nangong in such an embarrassing state. In the past, Nangong was an icy beauty, and she would fight if there was a disagreement. He had also never seen Nangong cry. It could be seen that she had suffered a lot just now. Qin Sheng could also guess some of it. A group of big and burly men, encountering such a beautiful woman with an orchid temperament, had long stimulated the beastly desire in their hearts. This was originally the bad nature of most men. Not to mention that this beautiful woman was like a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. How could they not be excited? What about Nangong? She had experienced many setbacks and tribulations since she was young. However, most of the time, she had the backing of the Qin family. In the end, many people did not dare to do anything to her. Moreover, when she carried out some tasks, she had a strong logistics team to cooperate with her. Many things were in the bag. It was rare for her to be targeted like today, not to mention being humiliated. This time, she went on a long journey alone. Secondly, she had two burdens. Thirdly, the other party was very powerful. And finally, she was targeted by the other party. Therefore, she suffered such a big loss and suffered a lot. Fortunately, Qin Sheng arrived in time. Qin Sheng was very angry. Such a beautiful woman. How could they be so cruel to her? Damn it, did they really think that the Qin family was easy to bully? Besides, before this, the Qin family had always been suppressed. Some time ago, the Qin family had even encountered a dark moment. Qin Chang'an had been attacked in Beijing, and the three children of the Qin family had been attacked in Shanghai. It was obvious that the Qin family had to be exterminated as soon as possible. Qin Sheng had been holding back his resentment for a long time. It was just that he had not found a chance to vent it. Today, something happened to Nangong again. Fortunately, Qin Sheng arrived in time. Now, he wanted to vent his anger. Qin Sheng didn't want to waste time talking nonsense. Talking too much would just be useless. If he won, he could say anything. Therefore, after saying that no one should even think about leaving, Qin Sheng took the lead and rushed towards the man who seemed to be the leader, Brother Yi. At this moment, Brother Yi did not take it seriously. He felt that Qin Sheng was courting death. He actually dared to boast shamelessly that no one could leave. Did he really not know the immensity of heaven and earth? In that case, I'll let you know what it means to be F***ed instead of trying to show off. But in the end, at the same time, when Qin Sheng rushed over, Chang Baji and Hao Lei also took action. Hao Lei did not care so much. As long as Qin Sheng told him to do something, he would do it. Chang Baji knew the Qin family situation during this period. He had also interacted with Nangong. This woman was very talented and had great attainments in martial arts. He did not expect her to be like this today. Qin Sheng was facing Brother Yi. As soon as the two of them exchanged blows, Qin Sheng let Brother Yi know what was called awesome. A heavy punch was aimed at Brother Yi's face. Brother Yi subconsciously blocked it with his arm. However, the pain from his arm let him know how strong Qin Sheng was. After that, Qin Sheng kicked Brother Yi's back. During this period of time, he had already recovered from his injury. In addition, he trained in the gym almost every day and also sparred with Chang Baji. His strength had improved very quickly. If Brother Yi was at his peak, he might be able to fight against Qin Sheng. However, not only was Brother Yi slightly injured now, he had also consumed a lot of energy from Nangong just now. In addition, their mental state during this period of time was similar to Nangong's. Therefore, as soon as they came up, he was directly suppressed by Qin Sheng. Brother Yi then realized that the man in front of him was not simple. He did not even have the chance to fight back and could only defend tirelessly. Just when Brother Yi was in a daze, Qin Sheng jumped on one knee and hit Brother Yi's chest with his knee. Brother Yi was directly sent flying and fell heavily on the ground. Brother Yi's ability to take hits was not weak. He quickly got up and was ready to continue fighting. However, when he looked around, he was stunned. What was going on? The men who were surrounding Nangong and the others just now had fallen in such a short period of time. The two men seemed to be more powerful than the man in front of him. They were like ferocious tigers coming down the mountain. Every move was even more fatal. No one could withstand 2 or 3 moves from them. The situation on the field changed in an instant. Brother Yi was stunned. What should he do? There was no doubt about Chang Baji's strength. He was like a bug by Qin Sheng's side. Qin Sheng's strength had increased tremendously during this period of time. Now, he was on par with Nangong. As for Hao Lei, who was a soldier king, there was no need to say anything. When the 3 big shots fought with these stragglers, the result was self-evident. If these people were not injured, they might cause trouble for Qin Sheng and the others. Unfortunately, they had suffered a lot from Nangong. If they wanted to take down Qin Sheng and the others now, it would be a fool's dream. In the end, Chang Baji kicked the man in the front passenger seat away. He was the only one who could withstand 7 or 8 moves from Chang Baji. As for the others, they were completely vulnerable. At this moment, these people were all lying on the ground. Qin Sheng did not rush to attack. Brother Yi's side also did not rush to fight back. Both sides were in a stalemate. This is your strength? Qin Sheng, Chong Baji, and Hao Lei stood behind Nangong Baji and said slowly. Brother Yi subconsciously took a few steps back and kept a distance from Qin Sheng and the others. The cooked duck flew away just like that. He gritted his teeth and said, "Who are you people?" Those who were lightly injured had already climbed up and stood behind Brother Yi. Those who were already injured, and now they were even more injured, they simply lay on the ground and did not want to get up. Qin Sheng and the other two forced the 4 or 5 people who were lying on the ground to step back subconsciously. The situation had changed a little too fast. Hearing Brother Ye's words, Qin Sheng snorted coldly and said, "Are you King crazy? Why are you asking me who I am at this time? Then I will tell you who I am. I am Qin Chang'an's son, Qin Sheng." Brother Yi heard this and was obviously stunned. He was wondering why this person looked so familiar. It seemed that he had seen his information some time ago. However, at that time, he was not in charge of that matter, so he did not pay much attention to it. Only now did he suddenly remember. Brother Yi was a little upset. This was a great opportunity. If he had known that Qin Chang'an's son would come, he should have asked the boss to send a few big shots to participate in this mission. Then he could have directly killed Qin Chang'an's son and adopted daughter. This was a great credit. However, it was a pity that no one had expected this. Since Qin Chang'an's son had appeared, it was obvious that the 2 men beside him were his bodyguards. As for their strength, they had already witnessed it. Therefore, Brother Yi already had the intention to retreat. Otherwise, they might have to die here today. Brother Yi was more or less regretful. If he had known this earlier, he should have taken action earlier. He should not have dragged it until now. Otherwise, there would not have been such a change. What a pity. So it's you. Brother Yi pretended to be calm and said. Qin Sheng was slightly surprised and said, "You know me?" Brother Yi sneered and said, "Sijio City's Qin Chang'an's son. Now who doesn't know? I did not expect to see you here today. It is really fate. Since it is fate, then I have to cherish this fate." Qin Sheng said aggressively and had already walked a few meters forward. Brother Yi laughed and said, "Since young Master Qin has appeared, we will accept today's matter. You guys are lucky. We will meet again someday. I think we will meet again soon." Of course, Qin Sheng understood what Brother Yi meant. However, he did not expect this man to be so shameless. He even said that he wanted to escape in such a dignified way. He said disdainfully, "Want to escape?" Brother Yi did not talk nonsense, and there was no need to talk nonsense with these people. After all, they were no match for these men. Moreover, everyone was exhausted. Even if they wanted to kill Qin Chang'an's son, they were powerless. They might as well save their strength and retreat in one piece. There would be opportunities in the future. Therefore, Brother Yi directly ordered, "Let's retreat." After he finished speaking, he did not care about the attitude of Qin Sheng and the others. He directly turned around and ran. The other men also ran without hesitation. Even the 3 men who were lying on the ground, upon hearing Brother Ye's order to retreat, got up and ran away. This scene was really funny. A group of people just said that they were courting death. In an instant, they ran away. Did they need to change their attitude so quickly? Qin Sheng was angry and amused at the same time, but he would not let them leave like this. Therefore, Qin Sheng snorted and said, "Want to escape? It's not that easy." Before his voice died away, Qin Sheng had already chased after them. Chong Baji and Hao Lei also followed without hesitation. As long as they were willing, they dared not say that all of these people would stay here, but at least half of them would. Chapter 581. Chapter 582. Acting naturally, the difference in strength between the 2 sides was too big, so Brother Yi was very self-aware. Just like how they faced Nan Gong and the other 2 men just now. They were in such a situation now. If they did not leave tactfully, then they would really have to pay the price. Brother Yi really did not expect that the leading man turned out to be Qin Chang'an's son. He was really bold. The dignified son of Master Qin of Sijio City actually dared to run to the northwest alone. If he had known this earlier, he could have made a bigger plan this time. At that time, it would definitely be a big surprise. Unfortunately, he missed it. However, where there's life, there's hope. His brothers were originally injured, plus they were exhausted after such a long journey. It was normal that they were no match for these men. There would be opportunities in the future. Therefore, Brother Yi just ran away with a clear conscience. Qin Sheng had already said that no one could leave today. It could be seen how angry he was. You guys bullied Nangong, so I will vent my anger on you guys. Besides, he would not be like Brother Yi, who only knew how to talk big before the fight started. After the fight started, he immediately admitted defeat and ran away. This kind of thing was not something he could do. Therefore, how could Qin Sheng let them leave so easily? However, at the critical moment, Nangong's sudden shout made Qin Sheng and the others subconsciously stop. Qin Sheng looked back and was puzzled. Why not chase? When he first saw Qin Sheng, Nangong's strong defense line was instantly broken. But now Nangong had recovered and said bluntly, "We have other things to do." Qin Sheng originally wanted to catch up with these people and find out who was behind them. In this way, when he returned to Beijing, he would have a clear goal. He would not always be targeted and did not know who did it. But since Nangong said so, after Qin Sheng weighed the pros and cons, he could only regretfully give up the chase. This time, they really got lucky. Since they had let them go, Qin Sheng did not think about this matter anymore. He quickly walked back to Nangong's side. He believed that Nangong would give him a reasonable explanation. Chang Baji had already untied the rope on Bahi. At this moment, Bahi was still a little confused, as if he did not understand the situation. Why did their status suddenly change so much? Of course, he was also very clear that these men were the reinforcements that Nangong had mentioned. There were fewer people than he had imagined, but they were much more powerful than he had imagined. Qin Sheng squatted in front of Nangong and asked, "Is he badly hurt? If it's serious, I'll send you to the nearby county hospital first." Nangong struggled to get up and said, "There should be no big problem. Help me to the front yard to have a rest. That is Mr. Ding's yard." Qin Sheng nodded. However, when he saw that Nangong was in such a difficult situation, he hesitated for a while and directly held Nangong up by his waist, regardless of Nangong's refusal and embarrassment. At this moment, the others did not think much of it. This place was not far from the yard. Qin Sheng and the others had noticed it a long time ago. They were still guessing who had built a small yard here, but they did not expect it to be Mr. Ding. After walking for a short while, they arrived at the small courtyard and entered the room. The tea on the table was still warm, which showed how many things had happened in this short period of time. Qin Sheng and the others did not pay attention to the environment here because they had rushed over to save Nangong just now. It was not until then that they had the time to look around and come to a conclusion. This was really a paradise. Mr. Ding really knew how to choose a place. Even Qin Sheng wanted to stay here for a while. The yard was antique. It should have been built with a lot of effort. However, it did not destroy the ecological environment here. Instead, it was integrated with this place. The room was basically filled with log furniture, which was simple but elegant. The daily necessities also showed the owner's taste, which was similar to the current minimalism. Through the window, they could not only see the meadow and the river, but also the mountains in the distance and the snow on the mountains. Together with a few ornaments, it was really beautiful and intoxicating. After looking around, Qin Sheng became more and more curious about this Mr. Ding. So far, he had only seen Mr. Ding's photo, which was on the bookshelf in Qin Chang'an's office. Therefore, Qin Sheng could not wait to ask, "Nangong, where is Mr. Ding?" Hearing this, Nangong was a little disappointed. After struggling for half a month, he still could not find Mr. Ding and almost lost his life here. This time, he was really a failure. Before Nangong said anything, Bach, who was next to him, took the initiative to say, "Don't mention it. You don't know that when we arrived here, Mr. Ding had left a week ago, leaving only a man waiting for us. He said that he had something to tell Master Qin. The man ran away in the chaos just now. Now we don't know where he is." Qin Sheng was surprised. "What? Do you mean that Mr. Ding is not here now? And he knows that you are coming?" "Yes. I think Mr. Ding just doesn't want to see us. Otherwise, why would he leave?" Bach took a big sip of tea and said, "He could take a beating very well. After all, he had been beaten by Nangong many times along the way. Therefore, at this time, he had almost recovered, but there was a little pain in his chest. Just now in the woods, the man's stick hit him, and then he suffered some physical pain. Other than that, there was no big problem. At that time, after being caught, he knew that with his ability, no matter how he resisted, he could not escape. In that case, it was better to be captured obediently and suffer less torture and pain, and then look for opportunities later. It had to be said that Bok's mentality was really good. Qin Sheng was more or less disappointed. He thought that he could see the legendary Mr. Ding this time, but did not expect that he would miss it in the end. Mr. Ding doesn't want to see us. It means that he doesn't want to go back to Beijing. Even if we find him, so what? I've already called my adoptive father. He said that he knows and asked me to bring Zhongshan back to Beijing. Nangong explained truthfully. Before the accident, she had just called her adoptive father far away in Beijing. Her adoptive father's attitude was still so calm, as if this result was within his expectations. Qin Sheng sat on a log chair next to him and sighed. Forget it. Maybe when Mr. Ding wants to go back, he will naturally go back. Zhongshan? Qin Sheng recalled what Nangong had just said and suddenly thought of this name. He asked, who is this Zhongshan? What is his relationship with Mr. Ding? When Bok heard Zhongshan, he immediately became angry and said, don't mention it. This man is a coward. After the accident just now, this guy ran faster than a rabbit. After going out, he directly rode a horse and ran away, not caring about our lives at all. Who knows where he has run to now? Qin Sheng did not believe Bok's side of the story, but looked at Nangong. Nangong had already recovered a little strength and said in a low voice, I think this man is quite smart. He is just an ordinary person. If he does not leave in time, he will only drag us down. At that time, no one will be able to leave. I see. Qin Sheng nodded silently. Thinking about it, how could a person who stayed with Mr. Ding be so simple? At this time, Nangong remembered something and said, I forgot to introduce to you. This chatterbox next to me is called Bok. He is from Inner Mongolia, the nephew of Mongolia's Emperor Man. In the past half a month, he took me around to find Mr. Ding. Bok was originally an outgoing person, but after coming to the desert, he faced those silent people every day, not to mention that there were so many acquaintances, so he did not like to talk. Since leaving the desert with Nangong, he seemed to have reopened the conception and governing vessels. He always talked endlessly. Hearing Nangong introduce himself, Bok said familiarly, my name is Bok. Man is my uncle. Today, thanks to you guys coming in time, otherwise I might have died. How can I call you guys? Oh, I already know you. You just introduce yourself outside. Master Qin's son, Qin Sheng, is a little different than I thought. Bok pointed at Qin Sheng and laughed. He was not polite at all, just short of putting his arm around Qin Sheng's shoulder and calling him brother, not to mention that he could really do it. Of course, Qin Sheng did not know who Emperor Man of Mongolia was, but since Nangong introduced him like this, it meant that this man was not simple. The dark-skinned man in front of him was Man's nephew, and he also took Nangong to find Mr. Ding for half a month. It meant that this man, Qin Chang'an, and Mr. Ding knew each other. Bok looked careless, but Qin Sheng would never underestimate this kind of character. He chuckled and said, is he not as noble as you think? To be honest, I think that Master Qin's son should be a very pretentious playboy. I didn't expect you to be so down-to-earth. Bok said bluntly, but of course he liked this kind of young master of the Qin family, because it was easier and more interesting to get along with him. If he was really that kind of playboy, Bok would not like him. Qin Sheng was a little helpless about Bok's straightforwardness. He replied, then I'm really sorry to disappoint you. Bok did not care and said, not disappointed. Not disappointed. I like down-to-earth people. I don't want to bother with those who are too high and mighty. Anyway, you saved me today. I owe you a favor. If you need any help in the future, just let me know. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. Okay. Bok then let Qin Sheng go, then looked at Chang Baji and Hao Lei and said, may I know how to address you two? Chang Baji said very calmly, Chang Baji. Hao Lei did not seem to like Bok, who was very friendly. He said coldly, Hao Lei, Both of their answers were so simple. There was no extra words. This made Bach not know how to say the lines he had prepared. He could only smile bitterly. Qin Sheng returned to the topic, looked at Nangong and said, "What's your next plan? When are we leaving?" Nangong thought for a moment and said, "Find Zhongshan first." Just as Nangong's voice fell, suddenly there was a chaotic sound outside. There were horses neighing, shouting, and so on. It was very chaotic. Qin Sheng frowned slightly and said to Nangong, "You stay here, I'll go out and take a look." After that, Qin Sheng walked out with Changbaji and Hao Lei. Bach also ran out. Outside, dozens of people appeared. They were all riding horses and seemed to have weapons in their hands. They surrounded the entire courtyard. Qin Sheng did not know what was going on. He was like facing a formidable enemy. Bach was a little shocked at first, but when he saw Zhongshan at the door, he immediately ran out with a smile and shouted, "Zhongshan, I told you, you will not abandon us." Chapter 582. Never would he have thought Bach was actually very interesting to get along with, otherwise a man would not have allowed him to stay by his side. It was not that other nephews could not endure hardships. Some of them wanted to have a bright future and could act for 2 to 3 years in exchange for 10 to 20 years of meteoric success. Bach was not acting. He really wanted to stay by his uncle on Man's side, and he really liked what his uncle was doing now. On the contrary, when Man was the emperor of Mengshi, Bach did not have much interaction with this uncle of his who had a say in Mengshi. There was one time when he was in Hua Haut University, and he got into some trouble. Originally, he hid it and endured it. Anyway, it was not a big deal. But after a relative found out about it, he could not bear it and directly told his uncle Man. On the same day, his uncle sent someone to deal with the matter, and the result was self-evident. Not only did the relative apologize, they even compensated for the medical expenses and so on. But even though the matter was resolved, Bach was not grateful to his uncle at all. He felt that this was his own matter and it was his own decision to deal with it. Moreover, he did not think that it was a big deal. The appearance of his uncle had completely changed the nature of the matter. Since then, Man did not go to see his uncle much. Unlike other relatives and friends who always surrounded his uncle like begging dogs wagging their tails. It was as if the slightest benefit would make them so excited that they could not sleep for a few days. However, when his uncle chose to retire and went to the desert to plant trees, Bach, who had graduated from university, followed in his uncle's footsteps without hesitation. At that time, everyone did not understand why his uncle did so, but only Bach understood. Others guessed that Bahi just wanted to show off in front of Man and then rely on Man's resources to find a future, but Bahi didn't think so at all. He just wanted to accompany his old uncle and follow him to fulfill his last wish. During this period, everyone did not understand. Even Man did not understand. He even chased Bach away several times. Of course, during this period, he also gave Bach many opportunities. As long as Bach seized any one of them, he would benefit a lot. However, Bach was a fool who didn't even have a girlfriend. He just liked to plant trees in the desert, and no matter how hard they tried to chase him away, he wouldn't leave. This time, the goodwill of the Qin family was placed in front of him. Man did not hesitate to give it to Bahi, but Bahi naturally rejected it at first. But before he left, Man chatted with Bahi for a full hour and finally convinced him to leave. He gave Bach 5 years, and no matter what Bach chose after 5 years, he wouldn't have any opinion. This was Bahi. He felt that Qin Sheng and the rest had saved his life, so he did not hide anything from them. He directly jumped from strangers to acquaintances, which was why he acted so friendly. Just now, Bahi had a lot of opinions about Zhongshan. He was a man, yet he abandoned a woman and ran away. He was a coward. Now, when Bahi saw that Zhongshan had arrived with reinforcements, his impression of him instantly changed. He ran over and hugged Zhongshan, who had just dismounted, and said, "Big brother, I knew that you were not that kind of person." Zhongshan did not understand and asked, "Who is it?" Bahi shook his head and played dumb. Nothing. Zhongshan was a little puzzled. Where did those strangers who suddenly appeared just now go? Who were the 3 men standing in the yard now? Where did Nangong go? So Zhongshan quickly asked, "What happened? Where are those people? Who are they?" Bahi laughed and explained, "These 3 men are our reinforcements. Those people have been defeated and Nangong is resting in the house. We were thinking about how to find you." Ah. Regarding this ending, Zhongshan was a little surprised and a little shocked. He had made a wasted trip and brought so many people here, but was fine as long as nothing happened. Zhongshan nodded to Qin Sheng and the rest in the yard and said to Bahi, "You guys go in first, I will explain to them." Bahi waved to the others and then led Qin Sheng and the rest into the house. After entering, he explained to Nangong what had happened, and Nangong was relieved. However, Nangong did not let Bahi go and said sarcastically, "Didn't you say that Zhongshan ran away alone?" Bahi chuckled and said, "I was wrong this time. I was gauging the heart of a gentleman with my own mean measure." Nangong rolled his eyes. It seemed that he was already used to bickering with Bahi. Previously, he was bickering with Qin Sheng. It was just a few days before he met Bahi. Not long after, the reinforcements that Zhongshan had brought here left the way they came. Zhongshan then entered the house and saw Nangong lying on the bed. He quickly walked over and said worriedly, "Are you hurt? It's just a minor injury. I will be fine after resting for a while." Nangong explained with a bitter smile. Zhongshan was still a little worried and said, "Why don't we go to the county hospital for a checkup? Then we will be able to answer to Master Qin." At this time, Qin Sheng also added, "Let's go to the hospital for a checkup. Didn't you ask the others to wait at the Jade Gate for a long time? We will go there directly." "Okay." Nangong hesitated for a moment and nodded. Zhongshan was looking at Qin Sheng, Changbaji, and Hao Lei curiously, guessing their identities. It seemed that Nangong was very obedient to this man. Could it be that his identity was not simple? At this time, Nangong took the initiative and said, "Zhongshan, let me introduce them to you. This is my foster father's son, Qin Sheng." Qin Sheng smiled and stretched out his hand. "Qin Sheng, nice to meet you. Nangong has already told me about you." Hearing Nangong's introduction, Zhongshan was stunned. He did not expect that the man in front of him was actually Qin Chang'an's son. It seemed a little ridiculous. Such a big shot actually appeared here. He also did not expect that the first time he met Qin Sheng would be under such circumstances. Many years later, when Zhongshan recalled this scene, he would still not know whether to laugh or cry. It was just a joke. At this moment, Zhongshan quickly adjusted his state of mind. He held Qin Sheng's hand and said, "I really did not expect to see you here. Nice to meet you." Next, Zhongshan, Changbaji, and Hao Lei also introduced themselves to each other and knew their identities. Everyone chatted casually in the room. After a while, Nangong felt that he had rested enough and told everyone that they could get up and go to the nearest county. So everyone packed up and left. They took the 2 cars that Qin Sheng and Nangong drove and set off for Guaza County in the south. Nangong, Qin Sheng, and Changbaji were in one car, while Bak, Hao Lei, and Zhongshan were in the other. There were no accidents along the way. When it was getting dark, they arrived at Guaza County and found a hotel to stay in. They would check on Nangong tomorrow. Guaza County was not big. It should be said to be very small. It might not even be comparable to some small towns in the south. It was also not prosperous. Qin Sheng and the others randomly found a restaurant to eat. This was also the first time they had a meal together. Of course, Qin Sheng did not expect that these people would become the core strength of his future. Bak sighed and said, "It's finally over. In this half a month, my mouth is almost out of water. I haven't drunk for a long time. Do you want a drink?" The others subconsciously looked at Qin Sheng. After all, Qin Sheng was the real backbone. Of course, Zhongshan and Bak were still not used to this kind of environment. Qin Sheng did not have any objections. He smiled and said, "Then drink less. When we arrive in Beijing, I will treat you to a good drink. We will not go home until we are drunk." Sure, Bak said happily. He only cared about whether there was wine to drink now. As for the wine in the future, he would think about it when they returned to Beijing. A group of men, with wine and meat, naturally chatted happily. After a few glasses of wine, they became more talkative. Hao Lei began to complain. Along the way, Bak was like a chatterbox. He always chattered nonstop. He had never met someone who could talk so much. Bach also retorted, "Bullsh asterisk T. In the end, you can talk more than me. The two of us are birds of feather." Qin Sheng drank the wine and smiled as he watched them bicker. It seemed that Hao Lei's character began to change. He was no longer so quiet. He was willing to listen to others and was willing to talk more. This was good. Nangong and Chang Baji did not drink. Nangong did not dare to drink because he was injured. Chang Baji rarely drank. From the beginning, when Qin Sheng met him until now, he could count the number of times he drank with 2 hands. Moreover, they were in a foreign place. There was already a crisis. If there were any accidents, someone would have to clean up the mess. Zhong Shan chatted with Qin Sheng casually. Qin Sheng mostly asked about Mr. Ding's situation. Zhong Shan would talk about some things and skim over some things. After eating and drinking, they returned to the hotel to rest. Everyone was exhausted and could have a good sleep tonight. After returning to the hotel, Qin Sheng first called the old man in Beijing and told him what happened today. The old man over there was silent for a moment, then asked them to return to Beijing as soon as possible. Qin Sheng then called the Lin family in Xin. As expected, Uncle Lin told him that the Tan family and the Zhang family had found an old friend to be their lobbyist and wanted to meet him. He declined politely. Then he would take the family of 3 to Sanya tomorrow morning to rest for a while. After making these 2 necessary calls, Qin Sheng and Lin Su only had a video chat for half an hour. They had not seen each other for more than half a month. Nowadays, the time they spent together was much less than the time they spent apart. Qin Sheng always missed Lin Su and reminisced about the days in the past. Finally, Qin Sheng fell asleep with his thoughts. After dawn, Qin Sheng and Chang Baji accompanied Nangong to the hospital for a checkup. The others still stayed in the hotel. The morning passed quickly and the checkup results came out. Other than some superficial wounds, Nangong's soft tissues and bones were slightly damaged, but they were not serious injuries. He would recover after resting for a period of time. Of course, the doctor had also prescribed a lot of medicine. As for whether Nangong would take it, it was unknown. After returning to the hotel, Qin Sheng told everyone the results. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, afraid that Nangong would have an accident. After lunch, they set off for the next place, Jade Gate. Of course, the most famous place there was Jade Gate Pass. But obviously, Qin Sheng and his friends were not going there for sightseeing, but to help Nangong get revenge. Chapter 583. We are all gambling. Those people were naturally the group of outlaws in the no man's land. A few days ago, they had extorted 2 million from Nangong and even made Nangong and he leave the town in a sorry state. This 2 million was Nangong's private money, and he had to get it back no matter what. Moreover, for Nangong, money was not a problem. After all, her adoptive father was Qin Chang'an, but she could not take it lying down. She had to get it back. 2 million for 2 lives, they were really greedy. It was too easy to earn money. Weren't they afraid that they would not be able to spend it? Therefore, at that time, Nangong made up her mind. As long as she was done with her business, she must kill her way back. Even if those people escaped, she would dig 3 feet underground to find them. Yumen was a county-level city. Like Guazhou, it was under the jurisdiction of Jiuquan City. Relying on rich tourism resources, it was slightly more prosperous than Guazhou County Town. When Qin Sheng and the others arrived, it was only afternoon. After all, the 2 places were relatively close to each other. In order to vent Nangong's anger, the Qin family sent a team of 7 people from Beijing to Jiuquan by plane and then to Yumen. But they only arrived this morning, otherwise they would have rushed over to support Nangong. It was not until they arrived at the hotel where the team was staying that Qin Sheng and Nangong found out that Brother Wu was the leader of the team this time. This also showed how much importance Qin Chang'an attached to this matter, but he did not tell Qin Sheng and Nangong. Compared to Qin Sheng and Nangong, Bach was more excited because he and Brother Wu were old acquaintances. Even Brother Wu did not expect to see Bach here. After all, he had not seen Bach for a long time. So Bach shouted, "Why are you here?" Brother Wu was also stunned and replied, "Why are you here?" The 2 of them looked at each other and laughed. They took a few steps forward and gave each other a big hug. Then, they punched each other's chest twice. This was how they met, and it was also how deep their friendship was. The others did not expect that Bach and Brother Wu actually knew each other, but it was easy to understand. Both of them were born in Inner Mongolia. Brother Wu's father and Bach's uncle were brothers, so it was not surprising that they knew each other. After getting to know each other and greeting each other, everyone sat in the suite and discussed their next strategy. Only Brother Wu was left in the room. This time, it was not a big deal, but also not a small one. It all depended on Nangong's choice. So Qinsheng looked at Nangong and said, "What do you want?" So Qinsheng nodded and said, "Bach, take out the map you drew. Then we will discuss the action plan and try to settle these things before dinner. We will set off overnight after dinner and try to come back as soon as possible." Qinsheng nodded and said, "Bahi, take out the map you drew. Next, we will discuss the action plan and try to settle these things before dinner. After dinner, we will set off overnight and try to get back as early as possible." Bach had followed his uncle on this route twice before, so he was more or less familiar with it. However, he did not expect that when he returned this time, he would find that the town was completely different. That was why he suffered a loss there. For the whole afternoon, everyone was in the room to confirm the plan and discuss it intensely, trying to be foolproof, including how to deal with any possible situation. Finally, all the plans were confirmed before dinner. During dinner, Qin Sheng and Nangong decided that Zhongshan would not participate in this matter. After all, this matter had nothing to do with him, and if something really happened, he would be a burden. Zhongshan did not have any opinion on this and did not seem to care about it. His biggest expectation now was to see Qin Chang'an and Master Qin. Everything else seemed to be insignificant to him. Nangong asked Brother Wu to leave a team member to protect him, and the others set off to the town in the no man's land. This was a practical exercise for the small team. After all, they might encounter more dangerous situations in the future. On the way to the no man's land, Bach and Brother Wu's car was at the front. Brother Wu kept Bach smoking and chatting with him to relieve his boredom. "Does that mean that you will also stay in the Qin family after you go to Beijing?" Brother Wu asked thoughtfully after listening to Bach's words. Bach, who was driving, did not look back and said, "Yes, Uncle arranged it this way. I have no choice. I still like to plant trees in the desert." Brother Wu sighed and said, "Actually, it's good to come to Beijing. After all, it's a big city with everything you need. If you stay in the desert all the time, you will become useless sooner or later. Even if you want to do that, Uncle Man will not allow it." That day, he chatted with his uncle about many things, not only about him now, but also about his future and the fate of the whole family and so on. He asked him to go to Beijing this time, just to gamble. In 5 years, if he did well, he could jump out of the big circle in Inner Mongolia. If not, he could go back to Mengxi and take over all the resources he had before. Of course, if he was willing to come back to plant trees, his uncle would not object. Bach was also a little helpless, but he finally thought it through. No matter where he would go after 5 years, he must learn a lot in these 5 years. Besides, as his uncle said, he had to tie himself to the big boat of the Qin family. Bach turned back and glanced at Brother Wu. Perhaps Brother Wu's family had arranged it this way. After all, he was also a real rich second generation. Now that Brother Wu had returned to Hua Haut, he dare not say that he was omnipotent, but when the majority of his peers saw him, they had to bow their heads and call him brother. As for those who were on par with him, they also knew each other. But he was willing to be an ordinary lackey in the Qin family, and this had lasted for a few years. Even Bach admired him. "Brother Wu, you have been in the Qin family for a few years. Tell me, how is the Qin family?" Bach asked casually. Anyway, it was a long journey, and he estimated that he would only arrive tomorrow morning. Let's chat to relieve boredom, and also to let him be mentally prepared in case he met with misfortune. Brother Wu fell into deep thought and began his mental journey. After a long time, he said, "In fact, when my father first raised this matter, I was quite opposed. As everyone can see, as long as I live in Inner Mongolia, I can live very well. Why should I wrong myself? But after few things happened, I understood that at my father's stage, it was very difficult to move up, and if I wanted to surpass him, it could be said to be extremely difficult. Those few things hit me very hard, and it made me completely calm down. In the end, I took the initiative to raise this matter to my father. My father was very surprised, but he did not say anything and agreed. Then, I went to the Qin family in Beijing. At the beginning, in the Qin family, I was just a nobody. Every day, I was a lackey who ran errands. No one knew my background, and anyway, I could not come into contact with anything. I was a little annoyed and regretful, but I took the initiative to ask to come. If I left, not only would I lose face, even my father would lose face. I kept going like this. Every day, the places I went the most were the gym and the fight hall, to vent the excess energy that could not be vented. In this way, I persisted in the Qin family for a whole year. Suddenly, Uncle Gongsun from the oil field came to talk to me. He talked to me about many things, including my situation, my father's career, and so on. Finally, I made a choice. I chose to stay in the Qin family, and then I began to come into contact with some things in the Qin family. Sometimes I would go to other places to do some things, meet some people, and so on. Brother Wu regarded Bach as a friend. The two of them were quite congenial when they were in Hua Hout, and they often drank and chatted. Later, they embarked on different paths in life, but now they had reached the same destination. It was also interesting. Bach was learning experience. He was already prepared to be like Brother Wu, a nobody for 1 or 2 years. He was not afraid of this. After all, he could persist in the desert for so many years. Then, Bach seemed to have heard it and could not help but ask. Brother Wu was bored, so he continued. Later, things went smoothly. I followed the Qin family's track of promotion step by step. Everyone knew that entering the Chong and department was the biggest springboard, but I just didn't choose this path. My choice was to stay in the Qin family. When my position was high enough, I would enter the Chong system. At that time, I would definitely be in a high position. After a few years, until the end of last year, there was a sudden change in the Qin family. Then I realized that my opportunity had come, and obviously, Uncle Gongsun gave me this opportunity. Bach was a little confused and asked, "What change?" Brother Wu explained with a smile. The change was caused by Master Qin's son, Qin Sheng. He was the man who looked very ordinary in the car after you saw him. What do you mean? Bach still did not understand. Brother Wu continued, "There are some things that you don't know, but Uncle Man definitely knows. In fact, Qin Sheng has not been in the Qin family for so many years. Most people think that Master Qin only has one daughter. Even those who know Qin Sheng's existence have long thought that Qin Sheng has disappeared or died. It was not until the end of last year, when Qin Sheng came back, that everyone suddenly realized that the Qin family had made a big move, which also disrupted the layout of many people. That is why the Qin family is in crisis this year, because the cards are going to be reshuffled." Bach was not very shocked, but felt very surprised. He said, "I see. I was wondering why he was so down to earth. It turns out that he has always been outside." It was rare for Brother Wu to say so many words. Maybe he also wanted Bach to quickly rise in the following chaos. Whether for Bach or for himself, there would be no harm in the future. After all, as long as the foundation of these years was laid, in the next 20 or 30 years, as long as they did not make any big mistakes, they would not have to worry. Qin Sheng's sudden return disrupted the balance and the layout. First of all, Qin Sheng's aunt came back from Canada and brought back a daughter that no one knew about. This caused a change in the Qin family. Secondly, many people wanted to redo Master Qin's layout. After all, the situation was different. In the end, many people will start to plot against Qin Sheng. If Master Qin is safe and sound, Qin Sheng will be in power smoothly. Then the Qin family will rise to a higher level. No one wants to miss such an opportunity. I think Uncle Man is thinking about this. Speaking of this, Brother Wu's face was a little serious, but there was some complacency in his eyes, because his family had been ahead of many people. After listening to Brother Wu's explanation, Bach finally understood what was going on. After all, he was not stupid. It was just that he did not know some specific things. He sighed and said, "So that's how it is. I finally know why Uncle gave me 5 years." Brother Wu admired Uncle Man very much. After all, even his father admired him very much. So he smiled and said, Uncle Man is planning for a rainy day. But you are a little lucky. This time, only Nangong was supposed to do the task, but you met Qin Sheng by accident. Many people want to get close to him, but you don't know how difficult it is. Bach smiled and was not very proud. On the contrary, he had an intuition that after entering the Qin family, it would not be easy. He asked casually, Is there no risk in this matter? Brother Wu smiled playfully. Finally, he asked the key point. He then replied, How is there no risk? The risk is that many people will not let the Qin family succeed smoothly. They will definitely stop the Qin family. Some people do not want to be kicked out of the Qin family. They will definitely wrestle with the Qin family. Whether it is Master Qin or Qin Sheng, it will be very dangerous. As for our risk, once the Qin family falls, our efforts over these years will be in vain, and we may be implicated. However, the greater the risk, the greater the gain. How many times can we not gamble in life? We are all gambling that the Qin family will go through the wind and rain and see the rainbow, and then our life will be smooth sailing. Bach suddenly felt that this Brother Wu was a little strange, but also a little familiar. The strange thing was that he was not like the Brother Wu of the past. The familiar thing was that he seemed to have the shadow of his uncle. Chapter 584. Take it yourself, Ba. He did not expect to meet Brother Wu here, nor did he expect that Brother Wu would say so much to him. He also knew that Brother Wu really treated him as a friend. Otherwise, he would not have said so much. Brother Wu's words instantly solved many of Ba He's doubts. For example, why did his uncle insist that he go to Beijing? At the same time, Brother Wu also pointed out the path that Ba He had to take next. These were all experiences that he had experienced step by step and could not be bought with money. Finally, he also told them about the Qin family situation and the crisis that they might face. These were priceless advice, but it also caused Ba He to fall into confusion. These confusion were not solved by Brother Wu. Ba He needed to sort it out bit by bit in the future. It was not easy to travel at night. Ba He relied on his memory and navigation to find the small town in the uninhabited area. Ba He and Brother Wu did not talk about these people anymore. They talked about trivial things in life, such as whether he had a girlfriend, when he was going to get married, and so on. Brother Wu used to have a girlfriend, a female teacher in a high school in Beijing. He had a special liking for teachers. Perhaps it was because when he was in school, he was infatuated with an English teacher who taught him. However, the female teacher's family was urging him to get married, and Brother Wu's father was very dissatisfied with this relationship. He felt that if Brother Wu wanted to find a girlfriend, he must find a woman with a strong background so that she could help him in the future. Otherwise, he could only settle for the second best and choose a lady from a noble family in Inner Mongolia. After all, with their family's background, this was not a difficult thing. Thus, this relationship ended without a hitch. Perhaps the most important thing for Brother Wu was that he did not want to get married in a short period of time, or perhaps he was too rational and felt that his ambition was greater than love. However, what was certain was that Brother Wu had been working in the Qin family for several years. If he did not get a good report, then it would be a complete waste of time. However, the current situation of the Qin family made Brother Wu feel very pressured. This kind of pressure came from the outside world. He could only hope that the Qin family would survive this disaster and soar to the top. Then his years of hard work would not be wasted, otherwise it would really be a waste of time. The night was getting late, and the road was not easy to walk on. Ba He and Brother Wu did not sleep. One of them was driving while the other was chatting. Fortunately, they had a good rest yesterday, and Ba He was fully rejuvenated. The car at the back was quieter. Qin Sheng, Chang Baji, and Hao Lei had a tacit understanding that they would not disturb each other. They took turns driving, and Nan Gong slept quietly. At dawn, Bach finally found the small town in the no-man's land. Fortunately, he did not get lost. It had to be said that his memory was very good. They stopped 2 kilometers away from the town and began to investigate the terrain according to the plan. They drew a map of the town, and it would be best if they could find an insider. This would be very beneficial for tonight's operation. Bahi and Brother Wu were resting while Nangong was in charge of the security, and so on. Qin Sheng brought Changbaji and Hao Lei along with him to take care of this matter. Hao Lei used to be a professional scout, and this was not a difficult task for him. Among the people that Brother Wu brought with him, there were 2 retired scouts. This made Hao Lei overjoyed, so he brought them to the edge of the town to scout. Perhaps it was luck. At noon, they caught a man and a woman who were out of the town. After a round of intimidation, they got more accurate information about the inside of the town. This man and woman were originally out shopping. The moment they stepped out, they could not help but find a place to have a wild sex. However, when they were in the middle of their passion, they were suddenly caught by Hao Lei and the others. The man was so scared that he almost went limp. Within an hour, with the hard work of Hao Lei and the others, they got what they wanted. For example, how many people were there in the town, the specific map of the town, who were the dangerous people that they needed to be wary of, where their targets lived, and so on. Subsequently, Qin Sheng and the others made specific arrangements according to the information. Everything went smoothly, and everything was ready. They just had to wait for the sky to turn dark. After the sky turned dark, the lights in the town gradually went out. However, there were still some lights that were lit up. Everyone ate something to fill their stomachs and prepare to take action in the early hours of the morning. There were 48 people in the town, all of whom were adults. Among them, there were 12 women. Some of these women ran for their lives with men, and some were abducted and sold. As for the other 36 men, only a small number of them committed crimes. Among them, about 10 had indeed been involved in murder cases, such as Uncle Lee, who had been rooted here for many years. Most of them ran here to avoid trouble after helping others with their work, and some of them ran here to earn money. Although the town was small, there were many things involved here, such as the trafficking of rare wild animals, some transit stations for drug deals, and so on. There were also all kinds of gray deals and so on. Today, apart from the 9 people who had gone out, including this man and woman, there were only 37 people left here. Apart from the 11 women, there were finally 26 people left who could pose a threat. Qin Sheng and the others' plan was to get rid of those marginal people first, and then deal with the few targets that they had identified. The moon was bright, and the stars were sparse. The night sky was very bright. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of the early hours of the morning. However, it was a little cold. After all, it was only the end of April. It was still a little cold in such a high-altitude place like the Northwest. Finally, when the early hours of the morning arrived, everyone was instantly energized. They split into 2 teams according to the plan and headed towards their target. Qin Sheng and Nangong were in a team, Changbaji and Hao Lei were with Brother Wu and Bahi, and the rest were in groups of 2. In the dead of the night, the lights of the Jie Hotel had already been turned off. This hotel was about the same price as a 5-star hotel, so there was not a single guest today. Hence, the lady boss, Sister Fatty, took a shower and went to bed early. Her man was not around recently. He had gone to the northern borderline to deliver goods and would only be back next week. Sister Fatty felt a little lonely and was thinking of hooking up with some men in the town. Sister Fatty had just slept for a short while when she was woken up by the urge to pee. Just as she walked to the door of the bathroom, she suddenly heard the sound of the wind outside, and the window that was not closed properly made a loud noise. Sister Fatty, who was originally very timid, was shocked. She quickly finished peeing and ran into the room. She had only taken a few steps when she tripped. Sister Fatty was so scared that she almost screamed. At this moment, she realized how much she needed the man who was always scolded by her for being incompetent. Sister Fatty let out a long sigh of relief when she finally entered the bedroom. But why was the light in the room turned off? Sister Fatty subconsciously turned on the light. At the moment when the light was turned on, a pale face of a man suddenly appeared in front of her. Sister Fatty's pupils dilated instantly, and her heart raced. When she wanted to scream, she had already fallen to the ground with a thud. Only then did she remember Hao Lei's complaint. Damn it, why is he so fat? How are we going to get him out? At the same time, similar supernatural incidents happened in several other places in the town. However, The main characters and the plot were not quite the same. The same thing was the ending. Some of them were directly knocked out and tied up in their sleep. In this way, the few small teams had unknowingly taken care of most of the peripheral characters in the night. Of course, they had met with resistance, but these peripheral characters in the town were definitely not a threat to them. Next, it was time to take care of a few key characters. Qin Sheng and Nangong's targets were the group of people from the Jianghu restaurant. Chang Baji and Hao Lei's targets were Brother Huang and his two underlings. Brother Wu, Ba He, and the other three small teams were the other key and dangerous characters. The Jianghu restaurant was called Jianghu because Uncle Li had a martial arts dream when he was young. He always wanted to travel in Jianghu. However, when he entered society, he realized that the Jianghu he wanted was not the real Jianghu. But at that time, he had no choice. In the end, Uncle Li took the lives of a few people and fled all over the country. He had no choice but to choose this place and stayed there for many years. Apart from Uncle Li, there was a chef and two waiters in the Jianghu restaurant. One of them was in charge of collecting money, and the other was in charge of the kitchen. Tonight, as usual, there were not many customers. Everyone had already gone to bed. Everyone knew that Uncle Li was in a good mood recently. Why was he in a good mood? It was because he had killed 2 fat sheep and earned nearly $1 million. The rest was distributed to the people in the town. Uncle Li's room was at the deepest part of the second floor. The others were outside. Qin Sheng and Nangong first sneaked into the room of the two waiters. Before they found out, they took action and killed the 2 troublemakers. However, the subtle movements here had alarmed the chef and Chief Li inside. Although Chief Li was very old, he still had some skills. And that chef, he was also not a simple and ruthless character. He had followed Chief Li to do a few big business deals. Uncle Li stood up quickly and asked, "Who is it?" The chef, who was outside, also put on his clothes and turned on the light. The two of them met in the corridor. Uncle Li frowned and asked, "Chef, did you hear anything?" The chef had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He had a beard and a greasy smell. However, his eyes were very fierce. The reason why Uncle Li had a lot of prestige in the town was that he had a group of people who were good at fighting. The chef was one of them. The other 2 had gone out to do something this time. "Uncle Li, did you hear it too?" The chef asked in a deep voice. Uncle Li nodded silently. For so many years, he had always been awake when he slept. He was afraid that someone would do something to him at night. After all, he had done so many bad things that he was always afraid of ghosts knocking at his door at night. The 2 of them walked out slowly. When they were about to walk to the door of the 2 waiters' room, they suddenly found a strange man standing at the staircase. This made Uncle Li and the chef nervous instantly. However, they were not afraid because they had encountered this kind of situation many times. Then, they heard the movement behind them again. They looked back subconsciously. This time, they saw a familiar person. After all, they had extorted $2 million from him a few days ago. How could they forget it? This time, Uncle Li knew what was going on. "I didn't expect it to be you," Uncle Li said with a smile. Nangong snorted coldly and said, "You should have thought of it. I thought you wouldn't come. After all, it seems that $2 million is not a big amount of money to you. You just treat it as a money loss to avoid a disaster. You won't entangle with us because of this small amount of money. However, I didn't expect that I was wrong," Uncle Li said very casually. Nangong laughed and said, "But I am such a stingy person. Do you want money or your life?" Uncle Li asked straightforwardly. Nangong asked in reply, "Money or your life? You take it yourself." Uncle Li's answer was very simple. As soon as he finished speaking, Uncle Li and the chef rushed in 2 different directions almost at the same time. Uncle Li faced Nangong directly, while the chef faced Qin Sheng. Chapter 585. Even the pot, there must be an inside story behind why this town could exist for such a long time. It was not something that Qin Sheng and Nangong could know, and they did not care about it. Uncle Li and the others had stayed in the town for a long time and were used to the life here. Even if they returned to the city now, they might not be able to adapt to it. Moreover, it was not as free as it was now. Of course, Some of them had left, and some of them were new. Anyway, there was no lack of passers-by. Many people had suffered losses here, and some had tried to pick a fight with them. However, no one had ever been able to take them down. It was because they had never met a tough opponent. This time, they were really screwed. Regarding what happened a few days ago, everyone thought it was an unexpected fortune. After all, no one had expected that someone would break into this town for no reason. Some people even chased them here for no reason. They even spent $1 million to buy 2 lives. However, the ending was even funnier. These 2 people turned out to be fat sheep. They spent another $2 million to redeem their lives. In this way, the town had earned $5 million. Since when was it so easy to earn money? Although the people in the town had seen more than $2 million before, it was the first time that they had earned $2 million so easily in a day. The people in the town had never thought that they would live a bloody life. Many of them could earn money, but not spend it. However, they did not expect that the man and woman would come back here again. It was a big surprise. However, they would not surrender without putting up a fight. Even if they were to die, they would still fight. Nangong dealt with Uncle Lee, while Qin Sheng dealt with Chef. Both of them were not easy to deal with. However, Qin Sheng and Nangong were not easy to deal with either. Nangong had recovered in 2 days. She was in a good state today. She definitely wanted to vent the bitterness and grievances she had suffered during this period. At the same time, in the building where Brother Huang was, a big battle was starting. Brother Huang and his 3 minions were playing with golden flowers all night long. It seemed that they were playing a big game. After all, they had earned an unexpected fortune recently. They were the targets of Chang Baji and Hao Lei. They were having fun and had no idea that someone had sneaked into the building. One of them went to the toilet for a while and was tied up by Chang Baji directly. Inside the room, Brother Huang scolded, "Why hasn't Skinny Monkey come back yet? Did he go to the toilet to visit his father's grave?" "Boss, Skinny Monkey is a little hot these days. Maybe he's masturbating in the toilet. Who told you to take us to eat foreign horses after we finish the job? You haven't fulfilled your promise yet," the man with a scar on his face said with a smile. In fact, he was also a little anxious. Brother Huang said angrily, "Why are you in such a hurry? Don't we have a batch of business recently? Mr. Lee asked us to wait for the guests to arrive before leaving." "Ha ha, I'm just saying," the man said with a bitter smile. He planned to find a place where no one knew him and start a new life after working for another half a year. After all, staying here was not a long-term plan. Brother Huang said impatiently, "Go and check on Skinny Monkey. Tell him to hurry up. We're still waiting here." The Scar Man had just opened the door when he was sent flying back without any warning. He landed heavily on the table, and the cards and money on the table spilled all over the floor. The sudden change startled Brother Huang and the other man. What the hell was going on? Brother Huang was the first to come back to his senses. He immediately prepared to jump out of the window and run out to call for help. When they were still in a daze, Chang Baji and Hao Lei had already rushed in. Hao Lei took the lead and rushed over. He grabbed Brother Huang, who was about to jump out of the window, and threw him directly onto the floor. Brother Huang got up and was about to resist, but Hao Lei punched him in the chest. The pain made his face change suddenly. On the other side, Chang Baji was facing another man. He easily dodged the man's random punches and sent him flying into the wall with a kick. Then he gave the man another kick on his chin, and the man fainted instantly. The Knife Scar Man got up and pulled out a dagger from somewhere. He fiercely stabbed towards Chang Baji, who grabbed his arm and threw him over his shoulder, smashing him heavily onto the ground. The knife-scarred man groaned in pain. He wanted to resist again, but Chang Baji had already controlled him. His hands were tied quickly, and the next second, his legs were also tied. On the other side, Brother Huang still wanted to struggle, but he was no match for Hao Lei. He was no threat at all. Hao Lei was using a standard grappling technique, and Brother Huang could only be captured. When Brother Huang's hands and feet were also tied, he asked loudly, "Who the hell are you? I scolded you. How dare you be so stubborn?" Hao Lei scolded and slapped Brother Huang's face. Didn't he know what kind of situation he was in? How dare he act so wildly at this time? Brother Huang was slapped, but he didn't give up. He was still scolding. Hao Lei didn't believe it, so he slapped his face several times until Brother Huang stopped talking. Go on. Aren't you good at scolding? Go on, Hao Lei said sarcastically. You didn't expect this day to come, did you? Think about what you did a few days ago. How dare you extort money from others? You're quite bold. Brother Huang's face changed slightly, and he fell into deep thought. He seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that the couple from a few days ago came back to take revenge? I thought you were powerful, but you're just SOSO. You're just relying on the fact that you have more people. When you meet a tough opponent, you immediately become timid. Hao Lei spat at Brother Huang, who was on the ground, and scolded. Chang Baji was not surprised at all. He said casually, let's go to the next place. At the same time, the same thing was happening in a few other places in the town. The process was still different, but the ending was basically the same. However, they also suffered some losses. In the Jianghu restaurant, Nangong and Qin Sheng were fighting fiercely against Uncle Li and Chef. Nangong didn't expect this old man to be so good at fighting. Fortunately, she didn't underestimate him, or she might have been at a disadvantage. The old man's punches and kicks were powerful, and Nangong's attacks were also very fierce. Both sides had their wins and losses, and no one had the upper hand. However, as time went by, the old man's physical strength was slowly exhausted, and he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Nangong's attacks suddenly increased sharply, and she finally began to suppress Uncle Li. Nangong jumped up high, stepped on the wall, and kicked at Uncle Li. Uncle Li couldn't dodge it in time, and could only block it with his arms temporarily. However, he didn't expect Nangong's strength to be so great, and he directly took a few steps back. Nangong didn't stop there. He kicked at Uncle Li's back with a whip kick, which Uncle Li dodged in a hurry. Then Nangong kicked several times in a row, and every time he kicked, the speed was even faster. He completely treated Uncle Li like a sandbag. Uncle Li was already exhausted, and he felt that his bones had fallen apart. Finally, Nangong got close to him, turned around, and kicked at Uncle Li's chest. Uncle Li flew backward and fell heavily on the ground. He didn't have the strength to stand up anymore. He lay on the ground, gasping for breath. It seemed that he had given up struggling and let Nangong deal with him however he wanted. At the other end of the corridor, the battle between Qin Sheng and the chef was a little boring. Qin Sheng only cared about attacking fiercely, while the chef only defended and then looked for Qin Sheng's loopholes to counterattack. However, his strength was at most equal to Qin Sheng's, so he couldn't gain the upper hand every time. Qin Sheng was also smart. He deliberately exposed a few loopholes to the chef, and then took advantage of the situation to attack the chef. After the chef suffered a loss, he didn't counterattack. Even when he was knocked down, he quickly stood up and continued, as if his ability to resist attacks was not any weaker than Bahi's. This made Qin Sheng feel very bored. He didn't believe that this man could take a beating. So Qin Sheng chose to use all his strength to take down this chef who was hiding his strength. After the Wing Chun martial arts got closer, Qin Sheng increased his speed and strength. The chef finally showed signs of fatigue, and after taking a few punches from Qin Sheng, he finally couldn't take it anymore. In a hurry, he used his knee to hit Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng took advantage of the situation and stepped back, making the chef think that he was going to dodge. Sure enough, the chef was fooled. He lifted his knee and kicked at Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng seized the opportunity and hit the chef's knee with his elbow. He seemed to hear the sound of bones breaking. The man was sweating profusely from the pain, but he didn't make a sound. When he landed on the ground, he didn't stand firm and staggered towards Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng used the same move and hit the chef's face with his knee. The chef's already blurred face became even more bloody. The battle between Nangong and Chief Li had already ended. Chief Li happened to witness the scene here and shouted, "Enough, we admit defeat." Qin Sheng was about to continue to follow up, but after hearing Chief Li's shout, he subconsciously stopped in his tracks. Anyway, the man in front of him had already fallen to the ground and didn't continue to stand up like before. "Do you really think that after killing us, you can walk out of this town safely?" Chief Li smiled disapprovingly. He really didn't believe that these people would dare to kill him. Nangong laughed happily and said, "Then do you really think that we dare to come back here alone without any preparation? I don't believe it. How many of you can come here?" Chief Li sneered. Anyway, it was impossible for him to easily spit out the money that he had put in his pocket. Nangong squinted and said, "You will know in a while." When Chief Li was still thinking about how to understand, he was directly knocked out by Nangong. The chef over there saw the situation here and thought that Chief Li had been killed. He wanted to rush over crazily, but Qin Sheng picked up a wooden stick beside him and put it down. As a result, the two people were also tied up. On the first floor of the Jianghu restaurant, it was very lively at this time. All the people in the whole town were tied up and dragged here. Some of them were still unconscious, while some had already woken up. However, their mouths were stuffed with all kinds of things, so they couldn't say anything. They could only mutter or communicate with their eyes. Everyone's eyes were asking the same question. What the hell is going on? Where did these people come from? And what did we do wrong? Many of them looked battered and exhausted. Some of their clothes were untidy, some of them were covered with bed sheets, and some of them were covered with blood, and so on. There were also others who were on the way here. On Qin Sheng's side, there were also a few people who were injured. Bahi was slightly injured, and a few of Brother Wu's team members were also injured to varying degrees, but they were all fine. When Hao Lei and Chong Baji dragged Brother Huang over, he was instantly stunned when he saw the scene in the restaurant. At the same time, 100,000 horses galloped wildly in his heart. At this time, Qin Sheng also came down with Chief Li and Chef. When everyone saw that Chief Li and Chef were also tied up, they were completely disheartened. This time, the whole town was wiped out. Nangong picked up a basin of cold water and directly splashed it on Chief Li's face. Chief Li instantly woke up when he saw the situation in front of him. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.